here as well. And we de-risked. Falling off the cliff is not the right word. We diversified. The trade went to other countries. We've increased by 36% our exports to Indo-Pacific. That's a big number. And it's clear, with that I started, first of all, it's supporting other democracies, right? Because we came out to the, we were rediscovered as a country. We came back from the occupation in a very similar manner, supported by others. So that's one thing. And then there's a practical element, right? A dependency on country, a non-democratic country, it will hinder you in the future. It will harm you in the future. We've seen that with Russia. This is a very practical argument.
Sadly, we have to end there, but Gabrielius Lensbergis, thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk.
Thank you.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We are live downtown, and man, did it rain. The sky just opened up in the early morning hours. We've got wet streets in downtown Winnipeg, and now the sky is starting to crack with a bit of clearing. Thanks so much for joining us. Our high today is going to be 20 in the city of Winnipeg, and you're listening to CBC. We're on air till 8:37 a.m. with the morning show, and let's say good morning to the team. Brad Lilly's behind the glass. Hi, Brad. Corey Funk is here also. Corey Funk is directing the program and will be covering the commute. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's also behind the glass in our control room. Abby is our senior technician on the show and covers weather on the air. Heather Wells is here also from our CBC Manitoba News Centre, and she'll start our day with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, what a night for some people in St. James last night, forced out of a large apartment block on Portage Avenue. The company that operates the Birchwood Terrace says they were given an order by the city of Winnipeg at 7 last night saying everyone had to get out of the building immediately after an engineering inspection found severe deterioration of that structure in various locations of that apartment block. We'll hear from some people who live there coming up as well. A forensic identification officer and a pathologist are expected to testify today at the first-degree murder trial of Jeremy Scabie. We're going to hear about what happened yesterday as a video of the police interrogation of Scabie was released. That's coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather's with us, of course, throughout the morning. Today, on the show, in the first hour of the show, have you ever thought about the benefits of swimming? Well, a journalist and author will tell us why swimming, indoor or outdoor, is a sport that's accessible for everyone. And she'll also share her own personal story around it. So stay tuned for that. In addition, on our mental health column this morning, what's the role of comedy? We just had the Comedy Fest wrap up here in Winnipeg, and maybe it was good for your mental health to get out and have a few laughs. So we'll talk more about that. Later on in the program, further building on what the news has been covering, CBC's Brittany Greenslade's been in court for the Scabie trial. She's going to join us with a full rundown as well. So she'll be in studio with us after 8 o'clock to talk more about the week, how it's gone, and what she's been hearing in court. And we'll also have Bartley Kivas in with us in studio also talking about what's going on with the dock sitting on dry land, the scene across the shores of Lake Winnipeg.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
You ready for this?
Ncuti Gatwa is the new Doctor Who, the time and space traveling lead in the much-loved British science fiction TV show. Ncuti will tell you what he wanted to bring to this character as the first black queer doctor in the show's 60-year history.
Give me the lovin'!
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Big news for basketball fans and fans of women's professional sport. CBC Sports has learned Toronto is getting a WNBA team. The official announcement isn't expected for a couple of weeks, but Shireen Ahmad with CBC Sports has been speaking to sources with knowledge of the deal and joins us now. Shireen, what do we know about this deal?
Well, what we do know is that the Toronto WNBA team is the 14th team. It's an expansion team in the WNBA, the Women's Professional Basketball League. Larry Tannenbaum, who is a board member of MLSE, he actually owns other teams. He owns the Toronto Raptors. He owns TFC. So he put a bid forth with his holding group called Kilmer Sports Incorporated. and they won that bid. To head the new franchise will be the former vice president of basketball operations for the Toronto Raptors. Her name is Teresa Rush. We already know this, and the team will play at Coca-Cola Coliseum starting May 2026.
So whether it is basketball or hockey, I guess the question now is how big could women's professional sports get in this country?
What we do know is that women's sports are growing, in huge numbers. It's not just the merchandise, the record attendances. There have been two previous exhibition games and preseason games of the WNBA, one in Toronto, one in Edmonton, and those sold out within minutes. The merchandise was gone. We know that viewership for women's basketball is on the rise constantly. And then there's also the proposed professional soccer league in 2025. It's just a really critical moment. And if you're not already a fan, it's a fantastic time to jump on board.
Shireen Ahmad in Toronto. Thanks, Shireen.
Thank you.
Police have forcibly removed pro-Palestinian protesters from the University of Calgary.
We are asking you to move off the campus property safely, or there will be arrests.
That warning from police shortly before they advanced on the crowd late last night. The demonstrators had set up an encampment during the day on Thursday. They're demanding the university sever any links, financial or otherwise, it may have with Israel. The CBC's Joe Horwood has more.
Met with resistance from the few remaining protesters, police used pepperball guns and flashbangs to clear the quad at the University of Calgary. After setting up the encampment early Thursday, about 24 protesters remained at the site late into the night, linking arms in solidarity. Others heeded warnings from police that if they stayed, they would be arrested, packing away tents and leaving campus. Shortly after 11 p.m., police moved in.
They have an old lady on the ground!
Police say they were notified of the protest by campus security at about 6:30 Thursday evening. Protesters were asked to leave and told they were trespassing. When they refused, the university called in police for assistance. According to the group behind the encampment, it's set up on campus to get the attention of the university's senior leadership after receiving no response to a letter sent days earlier. Similar to other demonstrations taking place across Canada and the U.S., protesters are demanding that the U of C cut any ties with institutions or corporations involved in the conflict in Gaza. Joe Horwood, CBC News, Calgary.
Israeli tanks have reportedly encircled the entire eastern side of Rafa. Residents say there are explosions and gunfire, with intense fighting reported between the army and militants. This comes just hours after Benjamin Netanyahu appeared on U.S. television. The Israeli Prime Minister vowed to press on with the Rafa ground offensive despite international pressure. Our correspondent Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with the details.
On the day after the U.S. president confirmed he was suspending a shipment of bombs to Israel and considering stopping more if Israel presses into Rafah, Benjamin Netanyahu was defiant in an interview with U.S. TV host Dr. Phil.
If Israel has to stand alone, we'll stand alone.
Of course, the U.S. is still overwhelmingly Israel's largest military supplier, with billions of dollars of other weapons in the pipeline. But it's also clear the U.S. wants Netanyahu to end the war with Hamas now, which Netanyahu said he will not do.
We've destroyed about 20 battalions of the Hamas's 24 terrorist battalions. We have another 4 to go. They're in Rafah.
The Israeli Prime Minister has been sharply criticized for doing everything possible for years to block the creation of a Palestinian state and for not having a plan for Gaza. Instead, he offered these thoughts.
We'll probably have to have some kind of civilian government, civilian administration by Gazans who are not committed to our destruction, but we're going to have Israel continually root out terrorists, because I don't see anyone coming in to do that right now.
Spain, Ireland, and other European countries are reportedly planning to recognize a Palestinian state on May 21st, regardless of Netanyahu's opposition, although without the backing of the U.S. and Israel, the act would largely be symbolic. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey are among those paying tribute to Rex Murphy. The National Post is reporting the commentator and political pundit has died at the age of 77. Murphy, a Newfoundlander, was known for his acerbic wit and strong opinions, as heard in this 2019 comment about environmentalists opposed to resource development in his home province.
Some wandering stranger who's just unlocked himself from some bulldozer blade, wanders into a place he's never seen before, and is allowed to chatter on about how you're going to destroy the planet. Who in the hell is he?
The CBC's Tricia Kindleman has more.
During his storied career, which spanned from the 1970s up until just days ago, Rex Murphy focused primarily on Canadian political and social matters. Speaking freely on those issues can leave behind a complicated legacy, something actor and comedian Mark Critch acknowledged.
He was very far right in the last few years, but he also thought that Pierre Trudeau was the greatest Canadian ever. So you might not agree with what Rex had to say, but oh boy, could he ever say it.
Critch, a fellow Newfoundlander, grew up around Murphy, who was a colleague of his father's. Murphy began his broadcasting career in radio, eventually hosting CBC's Cross Country Checkup Show, which continues to be a staple of its weekend programming, though he signed off in 2015.
Thanks to all of you I've met, said hello to. You've, in the main, been extremely kind, and in that sense, you've been overly generous. Thanks.
His final opinion column ran on the front page of the National Post on Tuesday. He's also being remembered on social media by politicians, including Stephen Harper and former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne, who also acknowledged his ability to share his thoughts so succinctly, even if they didn't always agree. She said on social media, quote, "This is sad. Rex Murphy didn't like my politics and I didn't like his, but he was a character and he will be missed a lot." Tricia Kindleman, CBC News, Toronto.
A chronic lack of dermatologists in Canada is slowing skin cancer screening, according to experts. It is taking place as melanoma rates keep rising. Yvette Brend reports.
I spent my teen years trying to get the perfect, what I called a lifeguard tan.
That left 75-year-old Bruce Ballingall's skull riddled with cancer.
4 melanomas removed from my head. I have more leg skin on my head now than head skin.
He's excited a new cancer screening service is heading to Kamloops, where his younger brother has waited for more than a year and a half to see a dermatologist. The Mole-Mobile is a van that brings nurses and doctors to rural and remote communities. There are only 725 dermatologists across the country, according to the Canadian Institute for Health Information. Philippe Lefrancois is a skin cancer researcher with Montreal's McGill University. He sees dermatologists migrating to hospital or cosmetic clinic jobs for better pay.
It does pay that much more, yes.
He says more need to be trained and retained to cut down wait times that allow skin cancer to spread. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
And finally, the accessories hip-hop artists wear are iconic.
My appeal. Walk through concert doors and roam all over Coliseum floors. I stepped on stage.
After Run DMC released this song in 1986, Jam Master Jay got a 14-karat gold pendant shaped like an Adidas sneaker. Slick Rick had a gem-encrusted crown and matching eye patch. How about Nicki Minaj's huge pink Barbie pendant covered in diamonds? All those jewels and more go on display today at the American Museum of Natural History. The exhibit is called Ice Cold. It shows the evolution of hip-hop jewelry over the past 5 decades, and yes, the exhibit does come with its own custom playlist.
Yo, what's up? My dealer. Standing on 25th Street, funky fresh and yes, cold on my feet.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Six 10 a.m. is the time right now. Good morning, everyone. Man, it rained really hard in the wee hours of the morning here. But now it's calmed down. The sky's starting to clear in Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live downtown on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thanks for joining us this Friday morning. This hour on the show, we'll discuss the benefits of something you might be thinking about right now. It's the time of year, swimming. A journalist and author tells us why swimming, indoor or outdoor, is a sport accessible for everyone. She's also got her own story about it. We'll also talk to an economics professor about Canada Post's financial situation and ask him what he thinks needs to change about operations at the Crown Corporation. So stay tuned. We'll find out what he has to say about your mail delivery service. And we have our mental health column coming up. The Comedy Fest just wrapped up. Maybe you headed out for a laugh. What's the impact of humor on our mental health? It's the subject of our column today. Well, there's been a lot developing in news. Heather Wells is in with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, people living in a large apartment block on Portage Avenue in St. James are scrambling this morning, trying to find new homes. The city of Winnipeg last night issued an order for everyone to get out of Birchwood Terrace. It says that order came after an engineering inspection found severe deterioration of the structure of that apartment block in various locations. We're going to hear from one woman who's lived there and who she's worried about, seniors. She says there are a lot of seniors in that building. So we'll hear more coming up. As well, Lake Winnipeg is in a drought again. The province says the lake is at its lowest level for this time of year since 1989. And Manitoba Hydro says continuing low water will prevent it from generating enough surplus electricity to sell to other jurisdictions. So that's going to have an impact there. We'll hear more coming up at 6:30.
That story about the apartment block, I never remember anything that sort of dramatic.
It's shocking. I can't imagine at night. There are people who our reporter spoke with who one of them says, I was supposed to go on a vacation today. Another one said, it's my birthday. Like, no one knew this was coming.
Yeah. Can you even imagine? So I thought the order, people can read more online. The order said by 8 this morning, everyone out. So, I mean, really, this is literally very little time. So.
Yeah, and do you take everything or they're told not to? Just get out. It's not safe.
Wow. Quite something. So we'll continue to follow that story. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We'll also hear from some of the residents. As Heather mentioned, we did have reporters on scene last night. So thanks to everybody who was working last night to get that story up and online. It is 6:12 a.m. right now. Abby Adeyemi is here to talk about what's going on in the weather. Hi.
Hi, Marcy. Good morning. It's going to be a bit windy today. We've had some thunderstorms overnight. I'm sure a lot of us were woken up to that sound. And it's going to be a little bit colder than yesterday today. As you step out, it's currently 10 degrees. We're seeing some light showers in the city, so don't forget the umbrella. We're going to be seeing this shower taper off sometime later in the morning and then giving way for clearing skies. However, there's a slight risk of thunderstorms still to come, so keep an eye out for that. And by midday, the winds will shift from the northwest, offering a refreshing breeze, with the temperatures reaching around 20 degrees. And if we move into tonight, Winnipeg will be experiencing mostly clear skies with some clouds rolling in towards the early morning hours of tomorrow, and we'll just dip down to a low of 6. But so far, we are at 10 degrees right now, and temperatures is climbing to a high of 20.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
I also heard the thunder last night. How about you, Corey?
Knew it. I didn't know there was thunder until you told me right now. I knew there was rain, but I was passed right out.
Yeah, you know what? Most of the heavy rain and thunder for me was in the. I was also sort of sleeping heavy, but it was kind of when I was getting up around like 3:45 or something.
Okay,
It was
yeah,
like,
It
and
was
then
perfect
now
sleeping conditions out there that we slept with our window open last night and everything.
that's
Oh, the pitter patter, love it.
Yeah, I know. It's such a good sound. I actually thought it would continue through the day, but it's already stopped, as Abby said. So, traffic, anything impacted?
Nope, pretty quiet so far, but if you're out there, you're walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, give me a call on that CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, let's start our Friday show with a bit of a laugh, shall we? It's a bit of wisdom that's shared through the ages that laughter is the best medicine. The question is, does it actually work? And how does it actually work? How do laughter and having a sense of humor help us deal with hurt? Corey explored some of the answers to those questions with our mental health columnist Mark Hennick, including his thoughts on a recent conversation with controversial comedian Kathy Griffin.
Hello. So, laughter and humor as healers. Tell us more about that.
Well, you know, this all really started because I was getting tickets recently to a few events over the next couple of months. And I just sort of noticed accidentally that most of the tickets I was buying were comedy shows. And that really made me realize that all my life I've been attracted preferentially to comedy above other things. And I think that's because laughter has just served such a cathartic and therapeutic function for me, especially in hard times. And thinking about our conversation that was coming up, I got curious about how humor can help us to navigate and heal from adversity. So to help me understand why that might be the case, I chatted with a comedian who herself has been through a lot, Kathy Griffin.
Mark, I'm so glad to talk to you, and I'm so glad to be doing shows in Canada because you people never canceled me.
Kathy is a two-time Emmy Award winner. She's a Grammy winner. She holds the Guinness Book of World Records title for the most comedy specials ever. But she's no stranger to controversy, as she sort of alluded to there. Back in 2017, Kathy got widespread criticism for posting a provocative image involving what she describes as a Halloween mask of then-President Donald Trump covered in ketchup. Now, the fallout from that, she said, was that she lost most of her friends, nearly all of her work. Event promoters pulled the plug on all of her upcoming events, and that whole situation took a really heavy toll on her mental health. In the aftermath, Kathy talked to me about how she became addicted to prescription drugs, she went through a divorce, she was hospitalized following a suicide attempt, and she lost her mother Maggie in the midst of all of it. Now, she credits that crisis with getting her sober, but it didn't end there.
A year after I got sober, I got diagnosed with lung cancer, even though I never smoked. So they took out half my left lung. Half my left lung is just gone. It's somewhere in a dumpster at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And I'm cancer-free, but I was injured during the surgery, so I have a permanently paralyzed left vocal cord, so my voice is a little bit altered. That's when I got really sick. And I think that's when the PTSD kicked in, because I feel like I lost my voice creatively because of the Trump scandal. And then I literally lost my voice.
Kathy went on to tell me that if it wasn't for her work, which is so rooted in her sense of humor, that's her identity, then she isn't sure where she'd even be today. So for now, she's just grateful to be in recovery and back on the road with her new tour, My Life on the PTSD List, which is her first in 7 years.
So what did Kathy Griffin say about humor and how it connects with challenging circumstances, especially like the one she went through?
Yeah, I asked her about that, and we talked a lot about flexibility, because her style of humor is very off the cuff and sometimes pretty unpredictable.
I was trained in the Groundlings improv group, and I had years of improv training. And believe it or not, that improv training is good for you across the board. And it teaches you to be able to make a left turn when you didn't think you would have to, or a right turn when you didn't think you would have to. And my act is very improvisational. I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. The audience doesn't know exactly what I'm going to say, and they can feel it. And that's kind of how I go through my life.
So I think that having that sort of improvisational outlook on life, it makes things funny, but it also helps us to pivot as challenging circumstances require.
And what are some of the other ways humor can support recovery in mental health?
Well, humor also helps with perspective taking. Now, this part I took from research on how comedy relates to mental health, and it turns out there's quite a lot of that. So humor seems to break or at least loosen the link between stress and mood disturbances. Several studies have shown that while, of course, everybody is going to experience stress at some point in their life, the people who tend to have a sense of humor about it, they're much less likely to have that stress then convert into a serious mental health problem. And that probably happens, at least in part, because comedy creates some distance or space between you and the stressor. And yet it's a delicate balance, because it's important not to get too distant or too detached either. So using humor to cope with challenges, I think in doing that, our task is to observe and examine everything that hurts and scares us. Look at that head on, but hold it lightly. Have a sense of humor about it to keep it in perspective. Be in it, but not of it.
So comedy is a very social, interactive thing, obviously. So do you think that the way comedy brings people together can play a beneficial role?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, in addition to what I mentioned about cognitive flexibility and perspective taking, those are largely things that happen inside your own head. But humor is also deeply social. I mean, one dominant theory of what makes things funny to begin with rests on the violation of social norms and expectations. When we do that in the context of comedy, it can help to break down barriers that we construct between people. It helps to kindle relationships, to create cultural narratives that can bind whole generations of people together. And as far as Kathy Griffin is concerned, both her comedy and her string of tragedies have helped her to foster fewer, yet much stronger friendships.
You know, it's the kind of friends that will say, come on over, I get it, you're hurting. And I want to be that person. So I love it if somebody calls me and says, can I come over? I'm feeling lonely today, or I'm feeling shaky. I'm like, yeah, come on over. We'll play with the dogs, we'll hang out. And so it has to go both ways. But you can tell your friends when they're the ones that actually show up.
The power of showing up. You know, I think what I learned most from my conversation with Kathy Griffin was that as long as you don't take yourself too seriously, then you'll learn to bend in the face of adversity without breaking so easily.
I'm going to make fun of myself going through this, and I hope it's okay for you guys to laugh at yourselves too.
If you'd like to listen to my full conversation with Kathy Griffin, you can get it over on my YouTube channel.
And Mark, you like to end with something you're grateful for every week. So what are you grateful for this week?
Well, you know, thinking about comedy and mental health, this week I'm grateful for every laugh given and received on big stages, in crowds, but also just at home between family and friends. I'm grateful for every private chuckle, every funny little thought that I've had that expresses itself just as a twinkle in the eye. And I'm grateful for the way that these moments are a little lighter than the one before and the one after. What a brief, blessed gift that is.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you.
Mark Hennick is our mental health columnist. He was in conversation there with CBC's Corey Funk earlier in the week. I want to mention, too, when it comes to mental health, tonight there's a really big event that I'm going to be involved in, and I'm just pleased to have been invited. So this is Kid Think. It's an organization in Winnipeg, of course, that helps kids 12 and under with their mental health and does all kinds of different programming and clinical outreach to help them. And so they're having their big annual fundraiser, and it's going on at Hotel Fort Garry. So maybe we'll see you there later tonight.
Danse, Anine, Boujou, and hello. It's me, your favorite cousin, Rosanna Deerchild. Guess what? Unreserved is turning 10. That's like 100 in Res Dog years. And to celebrate, we're inviting you to a live taping of Unreserved, May 22nd at the Park Theatre in Winnipeg on Treaty 1 territory. Sherry McKay, Doozy, and Unreserved's Auntie Circle will all be there. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community and click on the link to register.
That should be a great show. So if it's not full up yet, check it out. Click on the link. Full confession, I didn't click this morning. So it very well might be already sold out for later this month. That's coming up fast. It is 10 degrees in Winnipeg. It's mostly cloudy this Friday morning. Our high today is 20, a few showers ending this morning, and then it should clear. We then do have a risk of a thunderstorm. It's likely the one we just saw. So I think that's behind us here because we did have that early rolling thunder at 5 a.m. For most of the day, though, wind is going to be most of the story in Winnipeg. Well, next on the show, if you are looking for a new hobby or a way to exercise, swimming might be right for you. It doesn't hurt your knees in the same way running can. It doesn't require any expensive gear, and you can start at any age. And while lakes and rivers might not be so inviting at this time of year, of course, our next guest is here to talk about all the reasons to take the plunge, maybe at a local pool. Joining me is Alyssa Aegis, journalist and author of Secrets of Giants, a journey to uncover the true meaning of strength. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
So do you swim? What's your swimming story?
I do. I mean, I did not for my whole life. I was that kid that kind of stopped caring about progressing my swimming skills beyond like the doggy paddle. But I decided on a whim in my 20s to do a triathlon, which is an odd decision when you're not a swimmer. But I more or less had to teach myself at that point. So I like to say until then, if you saw me in the pool, I looked like the used car dealership's inflatable tube man had fallen in the deep end. But once I learned how to swim efficiently, I really did fall in love with it. And now, you know, at this point in my life, if I'm anywhere near a pool, I'm going to find time to swim laps.
I swam for exercise for lots of different periods of my life. I never kept it up, but it was always really critical. I loved how quiet the water is. For my mental health, I found it was really good for focus. And I loved the peace of it in the lanes. What's drawn you to love it?
I think it's a lot of what you mentioned. There's just this kind of meditative quality, I think, to just sort of getting in the pool and just going, the pattern of the strokes and you're breathing and you just you dive into it in a different way than you would with maybe any other exercise.
Let's talk about the physical side of it. What benefits are associated with swimming?
So on the physical side, I mean, swimming is mostly a cardiovascular activity. So it involves large muscle groups working together, which requires the heart to work hard to pump oxygen throughout the body. It also incorporates muscular endurance work if you're swimming continuously, like when you're doing a lap swim. Because water is so dense, it's nearly 800 times denser than air. Pushing against it as you swim can also help build muscle strength too. So it's targeting your shoulders, triceps, lats, obliques, abs, quads, calves, kind of, everything. And I think importantly, and you mentioned this at the start, which is that swimming is something you can do for your entire life. It's low impact and it's non-weight bearing. It's a lot easier on your muscles and joints as you get older.
What about your social well-being? Because it can be a solitary thing if you choose that way, and you need that. But socially, you can connect with people as well.
Yeah, I think it is inherently a solitary sport, obviously, because, it's pretty difficult to talk while you're underwater or in that brief second when you open your mouth to take a gulp of air between strokes. But there are still opportunities to connect with fellow swimmers, and that might just be between sets or chatting with someone on the deck before or after swim. But also, making a plan to swim with a friend or finding a group that swims at the same time can help with accountability. So if you're telling someone you're going to meet them, it's a little harder to back out. And we've seen studies to show that, working out in any capacity with a friend or a group also pushes us to go faster and further and work out more consistently than we would do on our own.
It's interesting that we're having this conversation right now because there's budgetary restraints for the city, and it's actually causing some neighborhood pools to be closed. And people have been sort of fighting and even raising money, residents themselves, in efforts in St. Boniface, I'm thinking specifically, to try and keep their local pools open. How accessible is swimming overall to the average Canadian?
Yeah, I mean, the average person is, not going to own a pool in their backyard or even have neighbors with a pool. Most cities do have community centers with pools, but obviously, in the situation that you guys are going through, where some of them are closed, and that's obviously a little bit more difficult. But if you do have a community center near you that has a pool, check out their schedule. They usually have times available for a free swim and for lane swim. And then once you've found a place to swim, there's really very little that you need to actually get in the pool. So you might already have a swimsuit. If you're going to be doing lap swimming, you want something that is maybe just a little bit tighter and you're not worried about kind of strings or anything dangling off of it. And then if you're going to be putting your head under the water to swim, if you're doing lap swim, for example, you'll want a pair of goggles just to protect your eyes. And there are a lot of community pools that will require you to have a swim cap. But that's pretty much it.
What's your advice? We do a lot of interviews actually about running at this time of year and getting active and how to start. But what about someone who's never swum before and they're wondering about, getting started and how much to push it? Because it can be actually interesting when you're swimming and you get out, you think you haven't been working that hard, but you're really, all of a sudden you're like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm standing on, level ground now. And that was a hard workout. So do you have some advice about how to get started?
Yeah, and it's interesting, that you mentioned the running workouts. I typically give the same advice, honestly, for starting any workout that you're not super familiar with, which is if you have the means to do it, finding someone to work with one-on-one. Certainly, if you do not know how to swim at all, you don't want to just jump in a pool without assistance and a lesson in some sort of form. But if you have the basic ability to move through the water safely and you just want to improve, working with somebody one-on-one like a coach is a great way to do that. There's no real substitute for someone who can watch how your body moves, but that is often cost prohibitive. So there are also groups that you can join. And then one of the great things about that is obviously you've got that community aspect, but also it allows you usually to work with a qualified coach or a trainer for a lot less money at the outset. And then if you prefer to head out solo, there are plenty of apps and online programs that you can access for free or minimal cost. But you can also just get in the pool and just enjoy the joyfulness of it. Splash around a bit and do the strokes that feel best for you that day.
Alyssa, thank you for this.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Alyssa Aegis, journalist and author of Secrets of Giants, A Journey to Uncover the True Meaning of Strength. We reached her this morning in Toronto to talk about swimming. Check out our local leisure guides, by the way, for all kinds of different lessons and information about swimming. And I've always just really loved to get in the pool. I love feeling weightless. And I know a lot of people also have sort of body image things about being out there in public in your suit. And I always used to say to myself when I was standing at the side of the pool, maybe not feeling my best, starting an exercise routine, thinking if someone's looking at me on the side of this pool, then I would just want to look at them in the eye and say, yeah, I'm here and I'm getting in the pool, aren't I? So more power to you if you're heading out for your morning lap swim this morning. It's just great exercise. We're going to cover weather traffic right after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. We've had overnight thunderstorms, but the sky is going to be clearing throughout the morning. It's going to get windy. A cold northwest wind will keep us cooler than we were yesterday. Today's high is 20. People living in a large apartment block on Portage Avenue in St. James are scrambling this morning to find new homes. The city of Winnipeg issued an order last night for everyone to get out of Birchwood Terrace. They have until 8 o'clock this morning. It says the order came after an engineering inspection found severe deterioration of the structure in various locations. Julia Walton has lived in that 180-suite building for the past year and a half. Now, she found a place to stay last night, but Walton worries for the seniors who live there.
But it's hard on older people. All of a sudden, just to come to your door and say you've got to be out of your building, you've got to be out and can't take anything, just up and go.
The city says a reception center is being set up to help residents find temporary accommodations. The first-degree murder trial of Jeremy Scabie is expected to hear from a forensic identification officer and a pathologist today. Both were involved in the case of Rebecca Comtois, one of Scabie's 4 victims. Yesterday, a video of the police interrogation of Scabie was released. CBC's Brittany Greenslade reports.
Come on in here. We'll grab Steve.
These are the first few moments after Jeremy Scabie was arrested. The 37-year-old taken into a police interrogation room by 2 officers. Scabie gets settled in.
You got a watch there?
They take the watch from his wrist, a keepsake police later learned was from one of the victims.
Her name is Rebecca Comtois. Okay.
Rebecca Comtois' partial remains had been found inside a North Kildonan dumpster just days before. Police questioned him about the gruesome discovery.
Here's just the ceremony. Yeah, well, this is the nature of human beings.
Hours in, he makes a shocking confession.
I killed 4 people. Okay.
Scabie has admitted to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Comtois, and a 4th still unidentified woman given the name Mashkade Bishake Ikwe Iban. His lawyers are arguing he shouldn't be held criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. The Crown is arguing he was intentional with his killings and they were racially motivated.
What happens to music is never going to be enough.
Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, we may have had a bit of rain last night, but Lake Winnipeg is heading into another drought. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the lake level is low enough to cause more potential trouble for Manitoba Hydro.
Water laps at the shore of Lake Winnipeg. There's just a little more shore than usual and a little less lake. Randy McMahon runs errands on the lake, a bed and breakfast in Penema.
Very, very unusual, yes. Yeah, you would never see all this rock in the springtime.
Lake Winnipeg is within a whisker, 12 millimeters to be precise, of its lowest recorded level for this week in May since 1989. Several major rivers that feed the lake are flowing below normal. Manitoba Hydro calls this a drought, and the Crown Corporation says if these conditions continue, it may not be able to generate enough surplus electricity to sell to other jurisdictions. That could mean another year of losses on top of the $190 million Hydro expected to lose for the fiscal year that ended in March. Finance Minister Adrian Salas says Manitobans shouldn't worry.
Manitoba receives most of our precipitation that drives hydro between May and August.
Lake Winnipeg is expected to rise a little until August. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Penema, Manitoba.
In Riding Mountain National Park, Clear Lake is open for swimming this summer, but not for boating. Parks Canada has announced a temporary ban on personal watercraft. Park staff will work to determine if the zebra mussels discovered in the lake last year can be eradicated. Now, a lot of the area residents, the provincial government, also oppose the move, but not all of them. Aaron McKay supports the ban. He says it's the price to pay to ensure Clear Lake safety for years to come.
We're trusting the science. What else can I say about that, right? If there's a chance that zebra mussels are in that lake, I don't want to take it. Forever is not worth one summer.
Parks Canada says personal watercraft can increase the risk of spreading zebra mussels. The province is asking the federal government to reconsider, worried about the impact to local business. He was one of a kind.
Welcome to Cross Country Checkup. I'm Rex Murphy. Let's talk.
That familiar voice has been silenced. The National Post says the political commentator and longtime journalist Rex Murphy has died. Murphy started at the CBC in the 1970s and would go on to host Cross Country Checkup for more than 2 decades. He also became a fixture on The National for his columns on affairs of the day. Known for his colorful words and sharp wit, the Newfoundlander was a mainstay in Canadian media for more than 50 years. In a statement, his family says he had been battling cancer. Rex Murphy was 77 years old. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You know, Heather Wells, over all these years, I never met him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to actually enjoy a meal with him once. He was in town at an event, and I was sitting right beside him at his table.
Oh, nice. Was he nice in person? Like just to sit with?
Oh, he was amazing. He seemed so acerbic when you saw him on TV or listened to Cross Country, but he had the most amazing vocabulary. He was fun. He was funny. Yeah, it was a great evening. I loved it.
My husband grew up in a family where there was always a dictionary at the table.
Yes, yeah, you would need that.
My family, not so much, but yeah, absolutely, you would need that when you're watching his commentary on the National. It's like, what did he just say?
It was an education, always.
Always, agreed. All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
6:36 is the time right now. Let's get to our regional forecast. Abby Adiyemi has the details.
Yeah, we're still stuck at 10 degrees. We have that light shower tapering off this morning, and it's going to be giving way to some clear skies by the midday period. But we need to let you know that it's going to be breezy and windy from the northwest, offering, I call it some refreshing breeze. Temperatures will be reaching a high of 20 degrees today, and tonight we'll see clear skies and some clouds would roll in towards tomorrow morning. Heading west to Brandon now, where it's 5 degrees and mainly clear. We are seeing a sunny forecast for today and a high of 22. As we move north to Thompson, it is 5 degrees also over there, partly cloudy. We're seeing some sunny skies ahead for today, and for folks in Thompson, you're going to be heading to a high of 18. Further north in Churchill, it is 1 degrees, and we are seeing mist this morning. The forecast calls for mainly cloudy skies and a chance of showers or drizzle later today, and you'll be getting to a high of +4. Down in Dauphin, where it's 7 degrees, already sunny at this time, we are getting to a high of 21 today. That's what's expected for your forecast. In Gimli, where it's 9 degrees and partly cloudy, we have a chance of early morning showers clearing up later this morning, leading to a high of 18. And in Steinbach, it's 9 degrees and cloudy, few showers expected to end this morning, and we'll get to a high of 20. Lastly, Morris is at 11 degrees, already seeing some sunny breaks. The Pembina Valley region will experience mainly cloudy skies with a chance of showers also tapering off this morning, and a high of 21.
You know what I did last night, you guys?
Tell me.
So I remembered to cover up sort of one thing in the yard. Like I've just got for my 50th birthday, I'm so excited. I bought one of those little propane fire pits.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I'm so excited. I don't have propane yet, so I haven't used it yet. But anyway, I managed to cover that up last night, but I thought, it's not going to rain that much. I didn't cover any of my chairs.
Oh.
So everything, I know, you can hear in their voices. It was just everything soaked this morning, so you're going to have to dry it all out. But
well, we're expecting some sunny skies, so
yeah,
it's going to dry it out.
Maybe this morning I'll do it.
I say just embrace it. Just sit on it, enjoy the cool feeling.
Do you know what? Our cushions have that thing where the top layer, have you ever done this, where the top layer looks dry, so you sit down and all of a sudden you realize it's like, it looks like I wet my pants.
I'm going to get some new pants. Yep.
All right, let's get into the commute this morning. You're going to have wet pants if you're on a bike, potentially.
That's true. And Dan on a bike actually gave us a call on the commuter line. But he did say overall, despite, maybe a little bit of water on the road, it's actually been a very lovely commute overall, especially if you do have a fender on your bike. But if you see anything else going on, though, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. Let me know what you're seeing. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, pretty quiet, pretty early. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
It is 21 minutes to 7 o'clock, and Christy Ramlakan joins us via Zoom for the Business Report. Welcome back.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So the Bank of Canada just released its latest outlook on the country's financial stability. What does it say?
Well, the central bank says households can weather higher borrowing costs, but flagged rising financial stress among renters. So the annual review says Canadians are proactively adjusting to higher interest rates and the financial system remains resilient. It says while payments have risen for about half of the country's mortgages, households have higher wages and savings so they can kind of, handle it. And bank officials say many households and businesses built up liquid assets during the pandemic, and a growing number of mortgage borrowers with variable mortgages are making those lump sum payments ahead of renewal. But non-mortgage borrowers with credit card and auto loan debt are struggling. So the proportion behind on payments has returned to or surpassed pre-pandemic levels. And just over 1 in 10 Canadians has a credit card balance of 80% or more of their limit. So for more on this, here's Ron Kneebone, who is the Director of Social Policy Research at the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary.
It's not going to help renters nearly as quickly as it will homeowners. As interest rates come down, if you own a mortgage, of course, it's affecting you pretty quickly depending on the term of your mortgage. But as a renter, it's not affecting you nearly so quickly. As a renter, you're hoping that this change in interest rates will spur the economy, maybe cause more construction of low-cost housing of the sort that you rent. All of these things are going to take far longer to happen. And so when the Bank of Canada adjusts interest rates, it probably impacts renters at a far longer lag than it does homeowners.
So the next interest rate announcement is set for June 5th. Many economists see policymakers cutting the benchmark overnight rate to 4.75% at that meeting. Markets put the odds of a cut at about 2/3. And that's because underlying price pressures eased in the first 3 months of this year. But the central bank has said it wants to see further progress on disinflation before cutting rates.
Wow, you know what? That stat you threw out there, that over 1 in 10 Canadians has a credit card balance of 80% or more of their limit. Is quite something. Let's go to another story this morning. Canada's Competition Bureau says it's going to look into the airline sector. What do we know about it?
Yes, so it plans to look into the state of competition in the airline industry and how governments can make improvements. So the Bureau will examine barriers to competition, such as regulations or policies. Melissa Fisher, that's a deputy commissioner with the Bureau, made the announcement while testifying in front of a parliamentary committee studying airline competition here in Canada. And she says the Bureau will look at improving competition for the benefit of domestic air passengers and the workers and entrepreneurs who enable those services. So recent events have raised questions about the state of competition in the airline sector. Lynx Air folded in February. It was at least the 8th budget airline to shut down in Canada since the year 2000. And the shutdown followed the closure of low-cost carrier Swoop and WestJet's purchase of Sunwing Airlines last year. Now, this will be the first study under new powers the Bureau gained in December, which include the ability to compel information from companies.
And before we look at markets this morning, why is Apple getting backlash over its latest iPad ad?
Well, critics are railing against the tech giant for what they say is a slight to artists and the creative community, a demographic once drawn to Apple products. So the ad titled Crush shows an array of creative objects, things like musical instruments, art sculptures, typewriters, a record player, and even a vintage arcade machine being pulverized by a hydraulic press. And then, of course, a glimmering iPad appears, and All I Ever Need Is You by Sonny and Cher plays. And, some have found the image kind of hard to stomach as artists grapple with the threat of artificial intelligence. Here's Marvin Ryder, who is a professor of marketing at the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster.
But unfortunately, in the artistic community, metaphors can hit, and sometimes they can miss, and this certainly seems to have missed. What has sent the signal instead is to say all of these other creative media, whether you're playing a record or you're playing a piano or you're sculpting, that's old, throw that away, we need to embrace something new. That isn't really what they meant to do, but that's the way the artistic community has taken it.
So after days of criticism, Apple reportedly apologized for the video, according to U.S. trade publications Ad Age and Variety. CBC News has reached out to Apple to confirm this apology, but the company hasn't responded to us yet.
What's going on with the numbers?
In Europe, markets have risen to fresh record highs. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets saw gains amid renewed U.S. rate cut hopes. So Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is up 61 cents to 79.87 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up $44.10 to $2,384.50 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.04 of a cent to 73.08 cents U.S.
All right. Thank you, Crystal. Have a great weekend.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy. You too.
That's Crystal Ramlicam with our business news on CBC. 6:45 a.m. It's mostly cloudy after the early morning rain and thunderstorm across Winnipeg. It's 10 degrees in the city. Brandon's mainly clear, 7. Thompson's partly cloudy and 6. And in Thompson today, sunshine and 22. It'll be warmer than Winnipeg. We're going to have gusty winds and a high of 20. And over in Brandon, 22 as well with lots of sun. But also windy in Brandon. Winds will be northwest 30 to 50. Still ahead, should your mail still be delivered daily? Well, Canada Post doesn't think so. So stay tuned. We're going to have an interview about that. But right now, a bit of music from Begonia from, of course, here in Manitoba. This is Get to You.
I can only show you what I am. Passing notes in every glass, and my glass is never full. These words, you act like you have never heard. When we both know that's absurd, we've been around it. Can't pretend we are astounded anymore. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I knew how to get to you. Wishing I had something I could do. And I can't contain, don't even try. Like a star up in the sky, you're an explosion, far away and broken in the night. It's hard, feeling like you're on your guard, and you only want to start a conversation based on your alienation, steering even in the dark. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I knew how to get to you. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I knew how to get to you. Wishing I had something I could do.
Begonia and Get to You. Look out for a new EP from her called Open Swim, and that is due out in July. It's 10 to 7 right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm RC Marcusa. We're on CBC this morning, and thank you for joining us here. Hopefully your morning's going well so far, Friday morning. Been a bit of a sort of on and off week for the weather. Yesterday felt positively like summer. Everyone out raking and wearing their shorts, and lots of laughter on the sidewalk of my neighborhood with kids playing, music streaming out of people's vehicles as they were driving by, and motorcycles hitting the road. It was just a beautiful day yesterday. Lots and lots of sunshine. Today, a little bit different. So we had that heavy rain in the early morning hours here and probably tapered off. It was still raining about 5 a.m. when I came in, but just started to taper off around 5:30. So now our sky is partly clearing in the downtown, and it is 10 degrees in Winnipeg. Well, next on Information Radio, should your mail still be delivered daily? Canada Post doesn't think so. Management at the Crown Corporation says that daily letter mail delivery no longer reflects the needs of Canadians. After generating revenue of about $7 billion last year, Canada Post reported an operating loss of nearly $750 million. To talk more about the situation and what future operations could look like, Moshe Lander is with us, a senior economics lecturer at the University of Concordia. Good morning.
Good morning.
So can you outline with some more detail why management at Canada Post says that Canadians no longer need letter mail delivery on a daily basis?
I think it's probably anecdotal that you and I could figure it out on our own, right?
Yeah.
When was the last time people sent actual mail through Canada Post or received mail? And even if somebody says, oh, I just did it last week, there's a good chance that they're of a certain generation. Or there's a good chance that they're in remote communities. Very few people have a need for Canada Post anymore. And we have so many other alternatives now to get and send mail that Canada Post is suffering losses and really can't see a way back to financial viability. So this is one of the steps they can take to try and at least minimize some of the damage that's being done.
Just so people can follow the ball here, how is Canada Post funded exactly?
So it's a Crown Corporation. It's effectively owned by the government. So where you said that they made $7 billion in revenue, unfortunately, they had $7.8 billion in expenses. And so that extra money comes out of the government coffers, which means that it comes from the taxpayers. And so for perspective, a family of four spent about $75 last year just covering Canada Post's losses, let alone what we would normally pay for through our regular taxes to help fund Canada Post. So you and I have spoken numerous times on the show about affordability issues, inflation, food prices, rent. Think about what $75 would do. It's not going to solve the problem, but you're not spending $75 on stamps. So I don't know that we're necessarily getting value for our money.
How has the situation with posting letters and parcels changed since the last time the postal charter was revised?
Email exists and is now almost everywhere. The private delivery services, while they technically existed, were much more limited in what they could do. So Canpar, UPS, FedEx, you name it, they're now everywhere. And of course, Amazon didn't exist. But remember, even when it did exist in those early days after the charter was updated, it was a book club, not everywhere you want to be right now. So it's a radically different environment in which Canada Post is now operating.
What are the options here for Canada Post to stem its losses as it operates alongside private delivery companies?
So one option is you can increase the price of postage to try and generate a little more money, but they just recently did that. You can cut back services to, say, twice a week instead of daily. They're about to do that. You could fire a bunch of workers. That's going to come because once you cut back from daily service to twice a week, you don't need all of those mail carriers anymore. But that's going to be difficult, too, because it's a federal union. The last one, which is the one that I would recommend, is just give up and say, we've had a great 150-year run. We're done. Everybody's got 5 years to 10 years to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. But say come 2035, Canada Post is no more.
So the value on the relationship between yourself and the mail carrier, I know people are going to be calling in about that. You mentioned the rural areas. You mentioned that older generation maybe that might still value putting a letter in the mail. All of those things are just, I'm thinking of a way forward for Canada Post. Could they make a business case to get heavily into the parcel delivery service, or is that ship more than sailed with Amazon long ago and there's no way that will be a viable option when you look economically?
They are already in the parcel delivery service, right? You can go to Canada Post and say, I have a package that I want to deliver. But the problem with Canada Post is that they have legacy costs. It's the same sort of thing that makes bricks and mortar banking so expensive, right? You have billions of dollars invested in physical post offices. So an Amazon distribution center has one huge facility that serves an entire region. How many post offices are there in Winnipeg? There's a dozen of them, right? So all of those buildings come with costs and maintenance and utility bills. And so it's super expensive to just keep the lights on and keep the mail going. The mail delivery service, fine, you have that relationship with your mail carrier. You can have that relationship with your Amazon UPS delivery person. There's ways around this. I like writing a written note as much as the next person, but that's also because I get to stick it in the mail for a little over $1. If you told me that I had to pay $10 to make a handwritten note and send it to a friend, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a handwritten note, I'm going to take a picture of it, and I'm going to attach it to an email saying, that's what my handwriting looks like, thinking of you. There's so many different ways that we could solve the problem without having to keep Canada Post around.
So
they just can't get beat.
Just in our last minute here, Moshe, I'm wondering if Canada Post is dismantled, what takes its place, or have we already answered our question by that?
We have answered our question. I get my notifications from CRA by email. I get notifications from my banker by email. I get promotions by email. I get my newspaper by email. And the stuff that I do need to send in a physical form, you've got the physical carriers that compete with Canada Post that do it much, much cheaper. The government can insist that northern communities need to be serviced. They can pay for that subsidy. It's not going to cost $750 million.
We'll leave it there. Thank you.
You got it.
If you want to weigh in on our conversation, 788-3205, especially if you're listening this morning and you have something to say about Canada Post and its future and where you'd like to see it go and how you would feel about the impending, it sounds like, proposed loss of the daily mail service. 788-3205 is our listener line if you want to call us. That's Moshe Lander, Senior Economics Lecturer at Concordia University. We reached him today in London, Ontario. 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Lots going on in the news here in Winnipeg. Here's Heather Wells with our headlines.
Good morning. Yes, people living in an apartment block in St. James on Portage Avenue are scrambling this morning, trying to find new homes. Last night, they were shocked, stressed, scared. Those are some of the language that they used when they spoke to our reporter. After receiving an order from the city of Winnipeg to get out of Birchwood Terrace, the issue concerns safety. An engineering inspection finding severe deterioration of the structure in various locations. We're going to hear from some people who live there and the ordeal they now face. So that's coming up. And Lake Winnipeg is in drought again. The province says the lake is at its lowest level for this time of year since 1989. Ryan McMahon runs errands on the lake. It's a bed and breakfast in Ponema. He says he's never seen so much exposed rock near the shore at this time of year. So we'll hear those stories and more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, as I've been mentioning, mostly cloudy in Winnipeg right now, though there are some nice cracks of sunshine downtown for sure. 10 degrees is the current temperature. We're going to head for a high of 20, and it's going to be windy. Winds will be northwest 40 to 60. The morning commute's been pretty good this Friday. 788-3093 if you have any updates at 2 minutes to 7 o'clock. Coming up after 7, Heather's been mentioning it in the news. What a night. What a scene in St. James. Can you imagine being suddenly told your apartment block's not safe? You're out by 8 o'clock this morning, and you're just told that last night. We're going to hear more from the people from the 180 suites who were told that. In addition, Bartley Kivas in with that story on the lake that Heather's also been mentioning in the news. Plus, it's giveaway weekend coming up this weekend. You're going to be putting things out to the curb. We're going to hear about people's plans, also about what they plan to put out and what never seems to be taken away, even if it's free. Do you have some of those things kicking around? And at 7:40 this morning, we have an interesting conversation. We're going to hear from a courtroom artist who has sketched some of the most notorious trials in Canadian history. She's going to tell us what it's like to draw people accused of violent crimes in many cases. So stay tuned. That's coming up. How do you choose what moments to capture? It's 1 minute to 7 o'clock. Stay with us right here on CBC. World Report's coming up next on 89.3.
Today on The Current.
And that the risk for the lives of the hostages is not worth this operation.
Ehud Olmert was Israel's prime minister when Hamas took power in Gaza. Now he is encouraging Israelis to take to the streets to stop the incursion into Rafa and says the current government has no strategy for the end of the war. Ehud Olmert coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Police have forcibly removed pro-Palestinian protesters from the University of Calgary.
We are asking you to move off the campus property safely, or there will be arrests.
That warning from police shortly before they advanced on the crowd late last night. The demonstrators had set up an encampment during the day on Thursday. They're demanding the university sever any links, financial or otherwise, it may have with Israel. The CBC's Joe Horwood has more.
Met with resistance from the few remaining protesters, police used pepper ball guns and flashbangs to clear the quad at the University of Calgary. After setting up the encampment early Thursday, about 24 protesters remained at the site late into the night, linking arms in solidarity. Others heeded warnings from police that if they stayed, they would be arrested, packing away tents and leaving campus. Shortly after 11 p.m., police moved in. Police say they were notified of the protest by campus security at about 6:30 Thursday evening. Protesters were asked to leave and told they were trespassing. When they refused, the university called in police for assistance. According to the group behind the encampment, it's set up on campus to get the attention of the university's senior leadership after receiving no response to a letter sent days earlier. Similar to other demonstrations taking place across Canada and the U.S., protesters are demanding that the U of C cut any ties with institutions or corporations involved in the conflict in Gaza. Joe Horwood, CBC News, Calgary.
Meanwhile, Israeli tanks have reportedly encircled the entire eastern side of Rafa. Residents say there are explosions and gunfire, with intense fighting reported between the army and militants. This comes just hours after Benjamin Netanyahu appeared on U.S. television. The Israeli prime minister vowed to press on with the Rafa ground offensive despite international pressure. Our correspondent Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with the details.
On the day after the U.S. president confirmed he was suspending a shipment of bombs to Israel and considering stopping more if Israel presses into Rafah, Benjamin Netanyahu was defiant in an interview with U.S. TV host Dr. Phil.
If Israel has to stand alone, we'll stand alone.
Of course, the U.S. is still overwhelmingly Israel's largest military supplier, with billions of dollars of other weapons in the pipeline. But it's also clear the U.S. wants Netanyahu to end the war with Hamas now, which Netanyahu said he will not do.
We've destroyed about 20 battalions of the Hamas's 24 terrorist battalions. We have another 4 to go. They're in Rafah.
The Israeli prime minister has been sharply criticized for doing everything possible for years to block the creation of a Palestinian state and for not having a plan for Gaza. Instead, he offered these thoughts.
We'll probably have to have some kind of civilian government, civilian administration by Gazans who are not committed to our destruction, but we're going to have Israel continually root out terrorists, because I don't see anyone coming in to do that right now.
Spain, Ireland, and other European countries are reportedly planning to recognize a Palestinian state on May 21st, regardless of Netanyahu's opposition, although without the backing of the U.S. and Israel, the act would largely be symbolic. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Security is being stepped up outside the Eurovision Song Contest. Finals begin tomorrow in Malmö, Sweden, and Israel has qualified, but there are calls for it to be banned for its war with Hamas. Anna Cunningham reports.
This is Israel's entry that's causing so much controversy. At a late-night news conference, Israeli singer Eden Golan was asked if her participation was making it unsafe for everyone.
I think we're all here for one reason and one reason only, and the EBU is taking all safety precautions to make this a safe and united place for everyone.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched through the streets of Malmo. In another part of the city, supporters of Israel gathered.
We thought it was important to get together and celebrate music.
For Eurovision fans, there is division.
I have decided to join the boycott this year.
Crystal, a Canadian UK-based drag artist, has cancelled a Eurovision watch party that had sold 800 tickets.
Is it necessarily going to make an immediate tangible difference to anyone on the ground in Palestine? Probably not. Who's to say what the big thing will be that helps shift cultural perception?
Eurovision's organisers insist the competition is not political. Its tagline is United by Music. Outside of rehearsals, Israel's singer Eden has been confined to her Malmo hotel room with armed guards on duty. Security is expected to be tight ahead of tomorrow's finals. Anna Cunningham for CBC News, London.
To this country, where women's professional sport is having a moment here, and it's about to get bigger.
From Hamilton, Ontario, from the University of Connecticut, number 10,
CBC Sports has learned Toronto is getting a professional women's basketball team. The WNBA has granted an expansion franchise to Kilmer Sports, headed by billionaire Larry Tannenbaum. He's the chairman of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which owns the Maple Leafs, Raptors, TFC, Argos, and Marlies. A source says the team will play at the same arena where Toronto's professional women's hockey team is currently playing its first playoff series. The official announcement from the WNBA is expected in 2 weeks, but sources with knowledge of the deal say this new women's basketball team will start playing in May of 2026. Some Nova Scotia fishermen want the Senate to help them reopen the baby eel fishery. The federal government shut it down because of its safety and sustainability concerns. 1,100 people are out of work. 2 of them testified before the Senate Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Kayla Hounsell has those details.
I personally have dealt with 21 ministers in my time as working as a fisherman, and this is one of the worst ways we've ever been treated.
Brian Giroux is a managing partner of a cooperative of baby eel fishermen. He told the Senate committee studying the management of Canada's fisheries he's not happy the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans has shut the fishery down for the 3rd time in 5 years.
You have 1,100 people out of work, so $100 million in 2 rural provinces. If you were the CEO of a company, wouldn't you be fired for that?
Baby eels, also known as elvers, are fished out of rivers in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. They're extremely valuable, worth nearly $5,000 a kilogram last year, and that's led to unauthorized fishing and confrontations with fisheries officers.
I got everybody in handcuffs.
Some Indigenous fishers say they have a treaty right to fish without a license and in spite of the fact the fishery is currently closed for everyone. Colin Deacon is an independent senator from Nova Scotia.
We're very much of the mind that something needs to change and it's achievable. Maine has proven it can be done.
Maine has instituted several strict measures to clean up its elver fishery. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans says it has launched a comprehensive review. The Nova Scotia fishermen are calling on the government to reopen the elver fishery this year. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
And finally, a chronic lack of dermatologists in Canada is slowing skin cancer screening, according to experts, and is taking place as melanoma rates keep rising. Yvette Brand reports.
I spent my teen years laying on Ambleside Beach trying to get the perfect, what I called a lifeguard tan.
That left 75-year-old Bruce Ballingall's skull riddled with cancer.
4 melanomas removed from my head. I have more leg skin on my head now than head skin because they took skin grafts off my leg to cover the spots.
He's excited. A new cancer screening service is heading to Kamloops, where his younger brother has waited for more than a year and a half to see a dermatologist. The Mole-Mobile is a van that brings nurses and doctors to rural and remote communities.
Hi there. Hi. How are you?
Kamloops isn't the only town short of skin specialists. There are only 725 dermatologists across the country, according to the Canadian Institute for Health Information. Only 31 will get trained this year, trickling a few more into each province. Philippe Lefrancois is a skin cancer researcher with Montreal's McGill University. He sees dermatologists migrating to hospital or cosmetic clinic jobs for better pay.
It does pay that much more, yes.
He says more need to be trained and retained to cut down wait times that allow skin cancer to spread.
It adds to a higher risk of death.
Melanoma is now the cause of death for an average of 3 Canadians each day. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm RC Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio on a now sunny Friday morning. Some early morning thunder rumbles this morning. You're on 89.3. Might also be on 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. This hour on the show, severe deterioration of the structure in various locations. That's what a city inspection said about an apartment block on Portage Avenue. So as you've been hearing in the news this morning, everyone was ordered to leave last night. By 8 a.m. this morning, everyone out. 180 suites. We'll hear how stressful that was for some of the residents last night as CBC was on scene. So we'll tell you what we know about what happened in Winnipeg last night. Also on the program this hour on the show at 7:40, we're going to hear from a courtroom sketch artist whose work has captured some of the biggest trials in Canadian history. She'll talk to us about drawing people from Peter Nygard to Paul Bernardo. So with more news details, here is Heather Wells now. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, and people who live in that large apartment block on Portage Avenue in St. James, it's called Birchwood Terrace, 180 suites, as you mentioned. They are stressed. They are scrambling. Some of them are crying. They don't know what they're going to do. They have until 8 o'clock this morning to get out of that building, as you said, because of structural issues the city has notified them about. So we're going to hear from some more residents and just what they're facing as they try to get as much stuff as they can out and try to find a place to live. So very difficult times for some of those people. And also, we are going to hear about Lake Winnipeg being in drought yet again. The province says right now the lake is at its lowest level for this time of year since 1989. What does that mean for people who are living near the lake? What does it mean for Manitoba Hydro? We'll hear more coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Bartley Kivas is also going to be here with a full report for us before 8 on that story. Right now, here's Abby with your weather.
Good morning once again. Those early morning showers have tapered off and it's given way to sunny breaks followed by clearing skies. That's what we'll see today. A mix of sunshine and clouds hovering our city. Temperatures will reach a high of 20 degrees today. And tonight we're expecting mostly clear skies and light winds for a pleasant evening. The highs for today would get to 20.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
And the quiet drive so far. Hey, Corey Funk?
Quiet drive, I'll take it. But if you do see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line whether you're walking, biking, driving. Would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, let's get into today's top story about the residents last night from 180 suites who were told to be out by 8 this morning. So the time right now is 7:13. Many people last night were already gathering their belongings and leaving as emotions were running high, scrambling to get out of this Portage Avenue apartment block in St. James. CBC's Ian Fraze was on scene last night and talked to local residents, starting with Danny Lieber.
I just got here. Honestly, I've been here for like 10 minutes. And what happened was, my girlfriend went down the street and she's like, some lady just told us we're getting kicked out. And I'm like, what? And I thought the lady was kind of crazy. So I'm like, okay, well, knock on the neighbors and see. And they're like, no, we're getting kicked out. And the next thing you know, the cops are down there and they're like with some lady saying, yeah, you guys are gone. Sure, yeah,
How frustrating is it for you?
It's scary because, you got, I got a toddler and in a family, right? And like, she's crying upstairs and it's on me as the provider of the house too. It's on me to provide and be strong. I have a 2.5-year-old kid. I have a girlfriend, and who wants to take in 2 cats, who wants to take in a little toddler, and a girlfriend, right? It's a whole circus, and not a lot of people want to take that on, right? So, as of 8 in the morning, I don't know if I'll be living in my car. try to get hold of my friends, but no one answers their phone at past 10. And that's my mom. Yeah, no one answers their phone past 10, and because I work night in Selkirk, so I came racing down and I tried to call some friends, and no one answered their phones. Anyways, yeah, that's it. I'm stressed out, man. Like, I don't even know what to do. So they say we're out at 8, but how much? Oh, I gotta go. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Andrei Belsky.
How long have you lived here?
Since, I believe, 2018.
Okay. So you say no one from the property management organization has come to talk to you so far?
Not yet. I went to the hallway. There was some gentleman. I asked him what's going on. He says, we're going to walk around all the apartments. We're going to come to you and explain everything. But when it's going to happen, I don't know yet.
But obviously you've seen a lot of commotion around you.
I saw it. That's why I'm here right now, because I wonder, like, what's going on. I don't understand.
We understand that people have been all told to leave and vacate the building because of a third-party structural assessment that's determined some significant issues in the building.
Oh my God. No, I don't know. Like, okay, I need to wake up my son and my wife then now and tell them what's going on. We have a cat, I have some fish, and we have no place to go. So where are we supposed to go then?
I understand there's a reception center that the city has set up. I don't know where that is, but it's I guess supposed to provide some advice or some direction.
Well, I would have to wait and somebody would tell me what to do next, because we're actually expecting my grandchild to visit us tomorrow morning. First thing in the morning, I would have to call my daughter right now to tell her that not to come. Okay. Whoa.
Hi, my name is Christian Omperville. I've lived at this apartment for at least 5-6 years already.
How you doing? How you feeling?
Stressed. My mom's handling worse than me right now. She's probably crying right now, and she was just baking bread. I was just doing my own thing after finishing work today, and now I just hear out of nowhere, like just a couple hours ago, we were all getting kicked out. So now about everyone's here there's a few friends here, people who are all parked in the inner garage here, people from all over just trying to get out now. I don't know why they decided to let us all know now. They should. Not everyone's going to be able to get out of here in the next, like, overnight, because we need like 2 days for everyone here, especially since there's a lot of elderly people in this apartment too. So I don't know. I don't know what the hell's going to happen here.
Do you live with your mom?
I do, yeah.
So you guys have both?
We both lived here for a while, yeah.
And now, you got so many boxes here. What are you trying to do now?
Well, now we're just gonna move out. That's it. They just said they want us out by 8 a.m. tomorrow.
And you were just saying before we went on camera, like, you need more time.
Yeah, we all need more time. Everyone needs more time. Not everyone here has friends helping them out. Not everyone has people that are willing to stay up for the next few hours just to move everything out. Because again, there's a lot. Everyone has big stuff. Not everyone has trailers. I saw a trailer out in the front, but I think that's for someone else. So, yeah.
Have you any thoughts on where you're going to go next?
Well, I saw a thing that they're going to have a few of us stay at the Holiday Inn over here, but that's about it. That's all I heard. All I've seen on a piece of paper for tenants and all that.
How's your mom doing?
Hopefully she's handling it well. Just, I don't know. Last I called her was over at our storage unit. She just said she doesn't know what to think right now, so. Yeah, but everyone's stressed. Some people are taking worse than others. I think you can hear a few people arguing there too.
Emotions are high.
Yep.
Those are some of the residents at Birchwood Terrace on Portage Avenue speaking with CBC's Ian Fraze last night. Now, CBC has reached out to the city and the building's operator, Lakewood Agencies, for comment. We've yet to receive a response. We also reached out to the city this morning to see if they had any information that they wanted to pass on to people. So this is 2440 Portage Avenue. If you can place that, it's in St. James, kind of Silver Heights, Birchwood area at Whitewalled Road. And once again, it's 180 suites. involved here in the apartment block. An engineering inspection found serious corrosion in the columns of the parkade at Birchwood Terrace. It's the name of the block. And the report said that, quote, it leads us to believe this is a pervasive condition that puts the overall stability of the structure into question, end quote. So you heard Ian mention their reception center has been set up to help residents find temporary accommodation. Resources and support will also be established, and CBC will remain on the story, of course, today to follow through on what happens with the building and with the residents. You can go online to read more at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
There are many people who bring success, innovation, accomplishment, and charity to our community. We'd like you to help us meet some of the best. CBC Future 40 will honor 10 Manitobans under 40 making a difference. Help us discover the inspiring people in our province by nominating a shining star in your community today. For details, visit cbc.ca/future40mb.
Time right now is 7:20. It's 10 degrees. It's mostly cloudy. And into today, a high of 20. Going to be windy tonight, clear and windy. Tomorrow, sun and cloud. 30% chance of showers in the morning and 60% chance late in the day. And on Sunday, sunny and 19. Now, I'm telling you about the whole weekend because if you're putting stuff out on your curb, you might need to have some tarps or things tomorrow, or at least be mindful of it out there because it is giveaway weekend. Maybe you're looking for something to pick up, a dresser to store some clothing, or maybe giving away a dresser to make some space. CBC's Jim Agapito asked some Winnipeggers about their giveaway weekend triumphs and fails. He spoke with Shelley Doucette, Maria Rodriguez, and Jason Lapine to start.
Anything you've tried to give away that you couldn't give away that you thought was awesome that no one wanted?
My kids.
Do you have something?
Yes, an old antique desk, like school desk. And then we just put it at the end of the driveway, and I thought nobody was going to take it. 5 minutes later, it was gone.
So now that you've said that, best find. You said antique. What's the best find that you've had?
Honestly, just games, toys for when my daughter was little. So
I'm wondering, do you have a strategy of when you go look for things?
First thing in the morning.
Get up early.
Get up early and go first thing in the morning.
How early are you going, and then what are you doing? Like, do you break it down? Do you have family all go and get things? What do you do?
I just drive around, and around 7:30, usually everything's already out there. So, yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I have to agree. Saturday or Sunday. Yeah.
Do Saturday though.
Yeah, Saturday's a good day. Yeah. Sunday is a good day as well. So
yeah, that's pickings.
It could be pick and lose. Yeah.
I would just wake up really, really early, and especially in the Charleswood area, there's a lot of really unique stuff. Just go really early in the morning. I would even say before 7, and then just try and take a truck or a
Have lots of help. Have lots of help. You might need it. Sometimes when you don't have the help and there's something that might be heavy or something, and you're just by yourself, it's just like, oh, then it's a struggle, right? So it's always nice to have somebody with you if you're going to go out and do this. So yeah.
Number one find.
You know, anything that's sporty, like anything that you can use. It could be a fishing rod, it could be tackle, it could be anything like that. You know, it could be even a hockey stick. Well, I mean, the old wooden sticks are a rare breed nowadays, but I mean, it's always nice to, pick up these things for, for some other kids as well that can use it too. So that's what I really keep an eye out for. So
I would too, especially books. See if there's any books or any, clothing.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Thomas. I'm more excited to get rid of stuff, actually, than to pick up anything, yes. Oh, we have a whole shed full. I think I have an old treadmill that I'm not using, things like that that's still working, yeah. I know one time I picked up a jack, like it was a huge, big, probably a 2-ton truck or something, I was told, and it was working. I sold it for like $80.
Have you been going to the free weekend and participating in that for a while?
Yeah, one last summer we did a whole morning. We had the SUV was packed of all the stuff.
What's some of the strategies that you have for people that might be going?
Definitely get out there early, for sure, right? More different areas, definitely. Just go somewhere you don't live, you'll definitely find something different. Wolseley gave us a lot of antiques kind of stuff, so that definitely somewhere different from where you live.
The best thing that you've ever gotten from the holy grail of finds?
I found this really beautiful, like it was a fruit dish, and it's still on my table, dining room table, and I just loved it. It was like just the stained glass of it, like it was still nice. So that's probably it.
Ebony Evangelista.
My name is Al Coligado.
Actually, to be honest, I'm just moving back to Winnipeg. So I was born and raised here, but I moved away for about 10 years. So I'm just coming back. So I don't really know. I don't know what to expect. I don't really know all the parameters towards free weekend, but it sounds fun.
I have no idea that there's such thing as free weekend, so free sounds good to me.
Yeah, I actually think that's so cool. Like, I think it's a nice way for people to be able to support other people without having to interact too much, but still be able to be kind.
Yeah, it sounds really cool to me. Like I said, I like free stuff. So
What are some of the items you would be looking for this weekend?
electronics.
Ooh.
Like
What kind?
PS5.
I don't know if they're going to give that away for free.
I mean, one can hope, right?
I think for me, it's more storage. I'm like bringing back a lot of stuff from 10 years, accumulated clothes and things. So it's like storage options for me. That'd be that.
So now that you found this out, are you going to go out this weekend and maybe look for things?
Yeah, if the weather's nice, I don't see a reason not to.
Yeah, exactly.
At least just to walk around and see. Maybe I might be a little shy to pick up some few things, but if there's something that I really want, it's there.
Yeah. And if you want to give away things, you can.
Yeah, see, that's another thing
Definitely.
too. You should give
Definitely. There's a bunch
At
of
your
things
house?
at home.
Okay, what would you give away?
Ooh.
There's a bunch of clothes at home.
Clothes,
Clothes
yeah.
for sure.
Furniture, maybe unused furniture,
Yeah.
like some of the shelving units and stuff that we're not using anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
CBC's Jim Agapito talking to some people about giveaway weekend. It is this weekend. Make sure you respect people's properties. Make sure you only take things marked free and have fun out there. Let's get to morning sports now at 7:26. Hello, Scott Regehr.
Happy Friday, Marcy.
Happy Friday. So let's get your thoughts on CBC's report this morning. Toronto's about to be awarded a WNBA franchise.
Yeah, hugely exciting. This will give girls, Marcy, playing the game around the country, a team to aspire towards suiting up for some game. It's the same thing boys had with the Raptors over the last couple of decades. And what do we see in the NBA right now? 26 Canadians in the league, by far the most represented nation outside of the States. Alison Sandmeyer-Graves is the CEO of Canadian Women in Sport.
Having role models, having folks that they can see week in and week out on their screens, even in their own cities, playing the sport that they love at the highest level and being celebrated for it and being encouraged around it and hearing their stories, things that, boys and men have enjoyed for many years with professional sports in this country.
The awarding of this franchise, Marcy, comes at a time when women's sport is booming. The WNBA and women's college basketball, thanks in part to the phenom Caitlin Clark, have both experienced record TV ratings over the past year. The Professional Women's Hockey League, it's set several attendance marks and has been a major success in its first year of operation. Then we have Project 8, the brainchild of the Canadian soccer player Diana Matheson. That's going to be a domestic soccer league starting next year. So exciting all the way around.
To football now, there was a controversial participant in Argo's training camp.
Yeah, Chad Kelly was involved yesterday working alongside the team's receivers for rookie camp. Many online, Marcy, are questioning why, since Kelly has been suspended by the league for violating their gender-based violence policy. A former Argos employee has filed a lawsuit alleging that Kelly made unwanted romantic advances toward her, and when she rebuffed them, she was fired. Argos president Michael Pinball Clemens explained why Kelly was at training camp this way.
I don't want to be flippant here, but I don't know how many workplaces you've been in where it doesn't have an issue. These are two employees who had an issue, right? And that happens. And then when it happens, we have to figure out how to justly legislate this process, and that's what the league has done. So if that changes, we'll change.
So Clemens is basically saying, Marcy, the CFL hasn't suspended Kelly from practicing, so that's what he'll do. The optics, especially with Kelly's photo emblazoned on huge banners outside their training camp, are not particularly good. Clemens, one of the most respected people in the CFL, says he takes responsibility for any and all of his players' actions. He was welling up in tears at one point talking to reporters, Pinball, saying gender-based violence is an issue he is passionate about combating and that the Argos will be reviewing how they go about doing it. And yet the possibility of Kelly, the CFL's most outstanding player last season, suiting up on opening day this time around remains. Reporters asked Pinball whether he thinks, or rather whether he anticipates Kelly starting, and Pinball just answered, I don't anticipate anything. So,
quick look at hockey.
Yeah, PWHL, Boston got 53 saves from Aaron Frankel last night in winning a playoff opener over Montreal. Before the game, Montreal coach Corey Chevry candidly told reporters not many people like Boston in any sports league. Why do I get the sense the phrase, how do you like them apples, might have been used in Boston's locker room last night. Toronto tries to go up 2-0 in their series against Minnesota tonight. And, of course, in the NHL, the Oilers tried to tie things up in Vancouver at 1 with the Canucks. Leon Draisaitl, they said his ailment in the first game was just cramping. Looks like it's more than that. He's questionable for tonight's game.
Be a good game to watch, though.
Yes,
Good
sir.
Friday
And I can
night
stay
game.
up for it, too, which is nice.
Nice, yeah. Thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Have a great weekend.
You as well. That's Scott Regehr with CBC Sports. Coming up on Information Radio here on CBC, we're going to hear from a courtroom sketch artist who sketched some of the most notorious trials in Canadian history. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, the sun is back. It is 11 degrees right now in downtown Winnipeg. It's going to get windy, a little bit cooler than yesterday, a high today of 20. It is a morning of panic for people who live in a large apartment block on Portage Avenue in St. James. The company that operates Birchwood Terrace say it was given an order by the city of Winnipeg at 7 last night telling everyone they had to get out of the building immediately. An engineering inspection found severe deterioration of the structure, the city says, in various locations. Julia Walton has lived in that building for the past year and a half. She found a place to stay last night, but worries about some of her neighbors.
Like there's some of, very senior people in this block that have been in here for 30 years that don't have other family and they have pets, and it's just heartbreaking to think, well, what are they going to do?
Danny Lieber also lives in that building, and he doesn't know what he's going to do.
Scary because, you got I got a toddler and in a family, right? And, like, she's crying upstairs, and it's on me as the provider of the house too.
Lieber worries he won't be able to find a place for his family. Last night he was cramming as much stuff as he could into his car. They have until 8 o'clock this morning to get out. The city says the building has about 180 suites. A reception center is being set up to help residents find temporary accommodations. We'll hear more on this story through the day right here on CBC Radio 1. Lake Winnipeg is in drought again. The province says the lake is at its lowest level for this time of year since 1989. Ryan McMahon runs errands on the lake, a bed and breakfast in Panema. He says he has never seen so much exposed rock near the shore at this time of year.
My main thoughts goes back to Manitoba Hydro, where they need higher water levels to fill up the reservoirs for fall.
McMahon used to inspect infrastructure for Manitoba Hydro. The Crown Corporation says continuing low water would prevent it from generating enough surplus electricity to sell to other jurisdictions. Hydro expects to lose $190 million for the most recent fiscal year because of drought conditions over the winter. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. The first-degree murder trial of Jeremy Scabie is expected to hear from a forensic identification officer and a pathologist today. Both were involved in the case of Rebecca Contois, one of Scabie's 4 victims. Yesterday, a video of the police interrogation of Scabie was released. CBC's Brittany Greenslade reports.
Come on in here. We'll grab Steve.
These are the first few moments after Jeremy Scabie was arrested. The 37-year-old taken into a police interrogation room by 2 officers. Scabie gets settled in.
You got a watch there?
They take the watch from his wrist, a keepsake police later learned was from one of the victims.
Her name is Rebecca Contois. Okay.
Rebecca Contois' partial remains had been found inside a North Kildonan dumpster just days before. Police questioned him about the gruesome discovery.
It was just the ceremony. Yeah, well, this is the nature of human beings.
Hours in, he makes a shocking confession.
I killed 4 people. Okay.
Scabie has admitted to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a fourth still unidentified woman given the name Mushkade Bishake Ikwe Iban. His lawyers are arguing he shouldn't be held criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. The Crown is arguing he was intentional with his killings and they were racially motivated.
What happens to music is never going to be enough.
Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
In Rocky Mountain National Park, Clear Lake will be free of most boats this summer. The popular recreational area is now closed to personal watercraft to try to stop the spread of zebra mussels. That invasive species was found there late last year. Parks Canada is forging ahead with the temporary ban despite many people who live there opposing it. Cottage owner Scott McMullen started a petition urging boat access be maintained. He doesn't expect to visit Clear Lake nearly as often this summer.
We'll be checking out other lakes around the province for sure to get our either fishing or boating in. I know I've seen a few boats over the winter already come up for sales anticipating this.
McMullen expects Clear Lake's economy is going to take a hit since he also expects it will attract fewer visits from visitors this year. A familiar voice has been silenced. Rex Murphy has died.
Thanks to all of you I've met, said hello to. You've, in the main, been extremely kind, and in that sense, you've been overly generous. Thanks.
Rex Murphy signing off after more than 2 decades hosting CBC Radio's Cross Country Checkup. Murphy started at the CBC in the 1970s. He also became a fixture on The National for his columns on the affairs of the day. Known for his colorful language and his sharp wit, the Newfoundlander was a mainstay in Canadian media for more than 50 years. In a statement, his family says he had been battling cancer. Rex Murphy was 77 years old. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Mark Critch will remember Rex Murphy this half hour on our program. Let's get to our regional forecast now with Abby Adiemi.
A minute there, we're enjoying that sunny sky, and it's like cloud cover again. So, but it's going to come back. Expect some clearing later this morning, a little bit windy later, and it's going to be cooler than yesterday. We'll be reaching a high of 20 after the morning showers we saw today. Tonight will be partly cloudy and will dip down to a low of 6 degrees, and tomorrow brings a mix of sun and clouds and possible afternoon showers and thunderstorm across the province. 6 degrees in Brandon and Thompson. The regions will have mainly sunny skies with highs between 18 and 22. Churchill is currently at 1 degree and it's experiencing cloudy conditions, heading to a high of 4. Duffin's at 9 degrees and will be sunny with a high of 21. Gimli is at 10 degrees and will be sunny, and of course some clearing, and later in the evening we will get to a high of 18. 9 degrees in Steinbach and sunny, climbing to a high of 20, and it's 10 degrees in Morris. The Pembina Valley region is clearing from the morning showers, heading to a high of 21. In Winnipeg, the showers have tapered off, giving us some sunny breaks and clear skies, and we're climbing to a high of 20.
Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
It's so awesome outside, though, in terms of how green it is, right? Everything's popped. The trees are budding, Corey.
It's like the best.
Yeah, the flowers coming out. It's lovely. And the commute?
Yeah, so far been very, very quiet out there. But if you do see something, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey Funk. It is 23 minutes to 8 o'clock on CBC, and next on 89.3 FM. A courtroom sketch is the only glimpse that many members of the public have into high-profile criminal trials. Sketches, for example, of serial killer Jeremy Scabie have been on the front pages of news organizations all around the world this week as the trial is ongoing here in Winnipeg. Well, Toronto-based Pam Davies is a nationally renowned courtroom sketch artist. And while she's not assigned to the Scabie trial, her sketches have captured some of the most notorious and noteworthy trials in Canada over the past 30 years. Trials of people like Paul Bernardo and Peter Nygard. We reached out to her to help us better understand what she does for a living and her art form. Good morning.
Good morning.
How did you get started with courtroom sketching, Pam?
Well, in my family, I come from a family of artists. And so drawing was always something in our home. My dad was one of the top illustrators in Canada, and my mom was a painter and printmaker. But then I was lucky to get a job at the Toronto Sun newspaper, where part of the job was to do court drawings. not on a regular basis. And after leaving the Toronto Sun, I've been doing it for 12 years freelance, and it's been pretty steady. Mm-hmm.
What are some of? I mentioned some of them. I mean, Bernardo and Nygaard, but you have a long list of memorable trials that you've been sketching.
Oh, sure. Dylan Millard, all 3 trials, especially the one that stands out is the one where he represented himself, and he'd come in shackles before the jury came in, and they'd have to hide the shackles because he was representing himself. Bruce MacArthur, serial killer. What I remember about him was he just had the most delicate fingers and just seemed so bizarre. Colonel Russell Williams, he was stands out because he would hang his head down until the pictures of himself came up on the monitor, dressed in women's underwear, and he'd tilt his head up. Alec Manassian, that was a trial completely on Zoom, and he would always have just constantly a blank expression on his face. He's the one who killed 10 people, running them over on the Yonge Street sidewalk. And then Marco Muzo, drunk driver, killed 3 children and their grandfather. These are all local Ontario stories, but I think they're pretty big.
We know them nationally. Yeah, we certainly do. I'm looking.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm just looking at your sketches while we're talking here, Pam, some of them. And it's interesting because every artist has their own sort of style, of course, but your sketches are, they have color in them, and you often have multiple faces in them as well. So I'm seeing sort of, and movement. You capture movement and emotion. And you even capture some of the exhibits. You were talking about, the corporal that was dressed in the women's clothing, and you've actually captured that in one of your sketches. How do you decide what moment to sketch?
Well, you just never know. You just have to be prepared to, I'll always have to have something. So I'll start off just drawing what I see until some aha moment happens, and then I'll either adapt that sketch or have to start all over again. It's just that what's really important is to tell the highlight of what happened in that day, and so sometimes it means starting all over again. But you've got to grab either that one where they're throwing a kiss to family members, or the Crown Attorney is in his opening speech. He's holding up the gun to show the jury. There's all kinds of things that suddenly happen, and that's the thing that's important.
And I misspoke there. Pardon me. I said corporal, not colonel. I want to ask you how do you? I'm looking at one of Nygaard where he has his hand on his head. He's leaning in. Obviously, that's a moment. So a photographer would capture that moment, but you're capturing that moment. When do you start your sketch? Are you like, there it is, and starting to sketch? You look up and the moment's gone. So your memory must capture detail in a very unique way.
That's right. You have to be prepared to, adjust the drawing, and often it's a long time of nothing happening, and then boom, suddenly something will happen that tells a story, and otherwise it's pretty static. For instance, the trial that I have been doing, Dallas Lee, it's a homicide. He sits in the jury box. He sits in the witness box, and he's static the whole time. There's so little emotion coming from him. And I wish I'd been able to draw his outburst of when he suddenly started speaking in Vietnamese really loud. You can't show that, but otherwise it's he held his hand up to his throat, it's showing how his mother grabbed at his jaw. And so those are the moments to wait for. Yeah.
What is it like for you to be dealing with the often gruesome details that are discussed during these trials and being in these rooms?
Yeah, I know. People always ask me that, and I just feel it's an important thing to do, to cover that, to be telling these horrific stories. But I think also drawing, it's a blessing in disguise that I kind of zone out to a point where I think that that's a coping method. But at the same time, I have to always be aware of what's going on and be prepared to, sketch what suddenly happens. So I can't completely blank out. But I'm not like one of the journalists that has to cling to every single word. So
it's a different form of reporting.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I just find it interesting that your very first trial was Susan Nels. Am I saying her name correctly? She was a nurse wrongly accused of murder of several babies at a hospital.
That's right.
Very interesting to sketch something like that.
Well, it was, because here's this really, she looked tight. She's petite. She looked anything but what she was charged with. But she sat there strong, stoic, and brave, and in the end, it was thrown out for lack of evidence. So that was my very first one, and it was such a big one to start off with.
Absolutely. Pam, thank you very much for giving us a glimpse into your career at a time where we're all watching a trial here in Winnipeg, but it also involves sketches. We appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
That's Pam Davies. She's a courtroom sketch artist. She's based in Toronto. She's worked on, she's renowned. She's worked on some of the biggest trials in Canadian history. She is currently not working on the Scabie trial, but of course, that is how we're absorbing that trial, sketches of serial killer Jeremy Scabie. We're going to get a report, by the way, about what's been happening in the courtroom, coming up with Brittany Greenslade here on CBC after 8.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
It is 7:46 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. And coming up, we're going to build on a story you might have heard in the news about Lake Winnipeg's water level that is nearing record lows. CBC's Bartley Kivas is in with a special report in moments. Right now, though, we do want to take some time to remember Rex Murphy, who's died at the age of 77. The longtime CBC contributor was a familiar face and voice, and what a voice, to media watchers all across the country. He appeared in so many places, most recently, of course, the National Post, but you'll likely remember him here on CBC Radio as the longtime host of Radio 1's Cross Country Checkup. His love of talk, his proficiency at doing so, entertained Canadians for decades. Murphy was born in Newfoundland in 1947. He grew up in the community of Freshwater, and as a young man, he headed to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. Upon returning to Canada, he tried his hand at politics. He ended up, though, at the CBC in the 70s, and he became known as a fierce commentator and an intellectual. So much so that he also became the subject of comedic parody. Last night on CBC News Network, one of the people who knew Rex Murphy personally and also enjoyed characterizing him spoke about Rex Murphy and his legacy. This is Mark Critch.
Well, I've only known a world with Rex in it. Dad worked with Rex at a radio station in St. John's called VOCM, and I lived right next door to that. So as a little boy, I remember seeing this man with wild hair in a golden turtleneck listening to music with Dad at the house, and he was larger than life. And growing up in Newfoundland at that time in the 70s, when I was a little kid, there were a lot of things like these Newfie joke books in Ontario and stuff, where they'd make fun of Newfoundlanders, and the joke always being that the Newfoundlanders were stupid. And as Newfoundlanders, having someone like Rex on the national scene, he totally disproved that notion. He was the greatest wordsmith in a place known for talkers. And he was a Rhodes Scholar, brilliant man, but he was just as home as interviewing a prime minister as he was talking to a fisherman at the wharf back home, and probably more so on that wharf. He never lost his touch with the common folk. And, sometimes he was far right, sometimes he was right on the left. I mean, he was very far right in the last few years, but he also thought that Pierre Trudeau was the greatest Canadian ever. So you might not agree with what Rex had to say, but oh boy, could he ever say it. Well, it's like you see somebody like Rex, and he is the person the country would go to hear a commentary about the latest news item on the national news. And it was a great piece of pride. And boy, whenever Rex came on the TV, Dad would shush everyone in the house and say, "Now you listen to this man," And he was such a great speaker. His favorite place in the world was a little place in Newfoundland called Gooseberry Cove, just a little sandy, rocky beach in Newfoundland. And this is the way he described it. He says, "But the arrival upon it and the studying at it will weld your favorite Beethoven adagio to that tease of Hopkins above, and you have a foretaste," which that's his way of saying nice beach, An incredible wordsmith.
Mark Critch, the star of this hour, has 22 minutes, and son of a Critch, speaking about Rex Murphy. Murphy has died at the age of 77. He had cancer. It was reported by the National Post. It is 9 minutes now to 8 o'clock on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks so much for joining us this Friday on Information Radio. Well, up next. The ice is off Lake Winnipeg's southern basin and waves are lapping at the shore right now. But there's something different about the lake this spring. It is low. As you've been hearing on the news, really low for this time of year. CBC's Bartley Kivas is here to tell us just how low and what that means. Good morning, Bartley.
Good morning.
So how low is the lake?
Well, according to Manitoba Infrastructure's Hydrologic Forecast Center, Lake Winnipeg's sitting at 712.26 feet above sea level. Now, that's not the lowest the lake has ever been, but that's low for this time of year. It's just a smidge above the lowest level it's been recorded at this time of year since Manitoba Hydro started regulating the lake. Now, by smidge, I mean 12 millimeters. The last time the lake was this low was in early May, was in 1989, and that was 35 years ago. So yesterday, I went up to the southern basin of Lake Winnipeg to see what it looked like.
And what did it look like?
Well, it was wet, Marcy.
Imagine.
Well, yeah, okay. Seriously, though, it looks like the Lake Winnipeg does in the fall, not the spring. The beaches are wide. There's lots of exposed rock along the shore. I went to Balsam Harbor on the east side of the lake, and there's a low water warning sign at the marina. The floating docks are down well below the pier. 3 of the boat slips are practically on dry land. Now, across the lake on the west side, I went to see Randy McMahon. He runs a bed and breakfast called Aaron's on the Lake. What are we looking at here?
We're looking at a very low water level for this time of year. It's the lowest I've seen it. I've seen it lower once, but later in the summer, early fall, where you could see more visible sandbars. But for this time of year, the lake is very, very low and quite concerning.
Why is it concerning?
Well, my main thoughts goes back to Manitoba Hydro, where they need more higher water levels to fill up the reservoirs for fall.
So he raised it. Are the low water levels a problem for Manitoba Hydro?
Well, yes, and the question is to what degree. As you may recall, Lake Winnipeg was low over the fall and the winter, and since the lake serves as a reservoir for hydro, the Crown Corporation wasn't able to generate as much electricity as it would have liked to generate last year. Now, Hydro expects to lose $190 million for the fiscal year that ended in March. That's based on its third quarter report, and that's mainly because Hydro didn't generate enough surplus power to sell to other jurisdictions. Now, if low water levels continue, that financial impact would continue. It's not looking great right now. A bunch of the major rivers that flow into Lake Winnipeg, they're flowing at volumes well below average for this time of year too, mainly the Winnipeg River and the Saskatchewan River. And meanwhile, the Churchill River, way up north, it's flowing at a record low volume for this time of year. And that's a big deal because some of the Churchill's flows diverted into the Nelson River, where Hydro has its biggest, largest generating stations. And this is why Hydro is calling this a basin-wide drought, similar to 2 years ago and probably the worst since 1989.
So what is the financial impact going to be?
Well, Hydro says it's too soon to tell, and so does Adrian Sala, Manitoba's finance minister. He says there's no need for concern.
We're still really early into the precipitation season. Manitoba receives most of our precipitation that drives hydro between May and August. So it's still really early days. Of course, as the hydro minister, I'd love to see rain in the forecast. But right now, it's too early to tell the impacts.
Now, the lake is expected to rise a little over the summer based on previous years, likely another foot as it's recharged by the rivers, many of which are low. But that'll bring it well short of where hydro would like it to be in terms of recharging the reservoir.
Looking at this from another angle, what does the drought mean for agriculture? Like, how are farmers doing this year?
Okay, so this is counterintuitive, but this hydro drought, it's not an agricultural drought. Manitoba's Hydrologic Forecast Center says even though the lake is low and many rivers are low, soil moisture across southern and central Manitoba, it's average to above average. Manitoba Agriculture says for precipitation for recent weeks, everywhere almost in southern Manitoba is wet. We've had a lot of rain in recent weeks, and so much that some agricultural producers couldn't get out on the fields to seed until this week. I went to speak to Curtis McRae. He's in the arm of St. Andrews, north of Okamic Marsh. He hopes to grow 4,000 acres of wheat, canola, and soybeans this season, but he just got the seeder out a couple days ago.
In the last 2 weeks, we've had a good inch and a half of rain, if not more. And now we're nearing May 10th, so that means I have 30 days left to get my crop in.
How tight is that?
It's tight enough I got to sweat a little. Like, we need a lot of good luck, a lot of this sunshine, which is glowing on me right now. I really like that. It's not impossible, that's for sure. Once we get the soil temperatures warm enough, when I get my planter unit running, then my acres per day go up quite a bit.
Curtis McRae says a lot of cedars should be rolling northwest of the city today. We've had several straight days of sun.
Yeah, beyond that little burst of rain we had in the early hours this morning. So what you're saying is low water on the lake doesn't mean dry conditions on the land.
Yeah, exactly. Hydro and agriculture are identical in one way. Their fortunes both depend, to some degree, on the weather.
All right, Bartley, thank you for this. That is CBC's Bartley Kivas. It is 5 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Now, just before we turn to news headlines this morning, I want to go to a listener line because if you were with us earlier in the show, you heard that we talked to an economics professor about Canada Post's financial situation and also about whether or not Canada Post should be looking at changing daily mail delivery or getting out of business altogether.
Good morning. It's Sandra Tate calling in from the farm at Rosendale. That's a very elitist urban attitude, I would say, that he's spouting, because a lot of us out here do not have the internet, so that's not feasible for us right now, and I have no interest in it actually, but I wouldn't mind if the postal delivery was cut back to if it were cut back to 2 days a week. That wouldn't hurt my feelings at all, because I just drive there on my way to Portage once a week and pick up the mail. The box is usually quite full, but we're not in the habit of in the country. You don't get door-to-door delivery. You don't even usually have a box at the end of the lane or whatever. So, but I do mail the bills in yet by post. So I just bought a new pack of stamps the other day at Co-op with King Charles on it. So on them. So anyway, bye-bye for now.
So that was a reaction to Moshe Lander, who was the economics professor that was talking about Canada Post earlier this morning and its operating losses and talking about the viability of its future. So they're discussing right now maybe changing mail delivery service. And Moshe was arguing that the days are gone for Canada Post to be viable at all. So if you want to weigh in, 788-3205. Heather Wells is here now with headlines.
Well, in just minutes from now, everyone who lives at Birchwood Terrace in St. James has to be out of their apartments. The city forcing everyone out of that 5-story apartment block on Portage Avenue for safety reasons. The city says an engineering inspection found severe deterioration of the structure. Tenants, understandably, are panicked, stressed. Some say they're scared, wondering how they'll get all their stuff out and where they'll go. They only have until 8 this morning to get out. A forensic identification officer and a pathologist are expected to testify today at the first-degree murder trial of Jeremy Scabie. Yesterday, a video of the police interrogation of Scabie was released. We're going to hear more about that in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
CBC's Brittany Greenslade will be here after 8 o'clock. She's been in court all week. She will be here with a rundown of some of the details of what Heather was just mentioning and about that video. So stay tuned. That's coming up after 8 in a live report. It is 10 degrees in Winnipeg. It's mostly cloudy. A few showers we did have this morning are now over, but you still might see a few puddles around from it. It's going to be a high of 20 today and a little bit windy in Winnipeg. Winds northwest 20 gusting to 40. The Friday morning commute's been pretty cooperative so far. Call us if you see any problems in the city or on the highway. 788-3093 is our commuter line. World Report's coming up next right here on 89.3. Stay with us on CBC.
With Tom Power.
You ready for this?
Ncuti Gatwa is the new Doctor Who, the time and space traveling lead in the much-loved British science fiction TV show. Ncuti will tell you what he wanted to bring to this character as the first black queer doctor in the show's 60-year history.
Give me the loving!
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Ehud Olmert was Israel's prime minister when Hamas took power in Gaza. Now he is encouraging Israelis to take to the streets to stop the incursion into Rafa and says the current government has no strategy for the end of the war. Ehud Olmert coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Big news for basketball fans and fans of women's professional sport. CBC News has learned Toronto is getting a new WNBA team. The official announcement isn't expected for a couple of weeks, but Shireen Ahmed with CBC Sports has been speaking to sources with knowledge of the deal, and she joins us now. Shireen, what do we know about this deal?
Well, what we do know is that the Toronto WNBA team is the 14th team. It's an expansion team in the WNBA, the Women's Professional Basketball League. Larry Tannenbaum, who is a board member of MLSC, he actually owns other teams. He owns the Toronto Raptors. He owns TFC. So he put a bid forth with his holding group called Kilmer Sports Incorporated, and they won that bid. To head the new franchise will be the former vice president of basketball operations for the Toronto Raptors. Her name is Teresa Rush. We already know this, and the team will play at Coca-Cola Coliseum starting May 2026.
So whether it is basketball or hockey, I guess the question now is how big could women's professional sports get in this country?
What we do know is that women's sports are growing, in huge numbers. It's not just the merchandise, the record attendances. There have been two previous exhibition games and preseason games of the WNBA, one in Toronto, one in Edmonton, and those sold out within minutes. The merchandise was gone. We know that viewership for women's basketball is on the rise constantly. And then there's also the proposed professional soccer league in 2025. It's just a really critical moment. And if you're not already a fan, it's a fantastic time to jump on board.
Shireen Ahmed in Toronto. Thanks, Shireen.
Thank you.
More than 90,000 jobs were added to the Canadian economy last year. That's significantly more than most analysts were predicting. Peter Armstrong reports.
That gasping sound you hear is from economists and policymakers right across the country. This is an absolute blowout of expectations. It was concentrated among men, mostly in Ontario, Quebec, BC, and New Brunswick. A little more than half of these jobs are part-time, but they're mostly private sector jobs. But it's not just the sheer number, the sheer volume of jobs that have been added here. The details are pretty strong too, right? Total hours worked is up compared to last year. Average wages up 4.7% on a year-over-year basis. But for all those gains, the unemployment rate holds steady at 6.1%. That's basically telling us that even by adding 90,000 jobs, that's only just keeping up with population growth. So a monster headline number, a little bit weaker in the details, but this is definitely not the jobs report of a very weak economy. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Police have forcibly removed pro-Palestinian protesters from the University of Calgary.
We are asking you to move off the campus property safely, or there will be arrests.
That warning from police shortly before they advanced on the crowd late last night. The demonstrators had set up an encampment during the day on Thursday. They're demanding the university sever any links, financial or otherwise, they may have with Israel. The CBC's Joe Horwood has more.
Met with resistance from the few remaining protesters, police used pepper ball guns and flashbangs to clear the quad at the University of Calgary. After setting up the encampment early Thursday, about 24 protesters remained at the site late into the night, linking arms in solidarity. Others heeded warnings from police that if they stayed, they would be arrested, packing away tents and leaving campus. Shortly after 11 p.m., police moved in. Police say they were notified of the protest by campus security at about 6:30 Thursday evening. Protesters were asked to leave and told they were trespassing. When they refused, the university called in police for assistance. According to the group behind the encampment, it's set up on campus to get the attention of the university's senior leadership after receiving no response to a letter sent days earlier. Similar to other demonstrations taking place across Canada and the U.S., protesters are demanding that the U of C cut any ties with institutions or corporations involved in the conflict in Gaza. Joe Horwood, CBC News, Calgary.
Meanwhile, Israeli tanks have reportedly encircled the entire eastern side of Rafa. Residents say there are explosions and gunfire with intense fighting reported between the army and militants. This comes just hours after Benjamin Netanyahu appeared on U.S. television. The Israeli Prime Minister vowed to press on with the Rafa ground offensive despite international pressure. Our correspondent Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with the details.
On the day after the U.S. president confirmed he was suspending a shipment of bombs to Israel and considering stopping more if Israel presses into Rafah, Benjamin Netanyahu was defiant in an interview with U.S. TV host Dr. Phil.
If Israel has to stand alone, we'll stand alone.
Of course, the U.S. is still overwhelmingly Israel's largest military supplier, with billions of dollars of other weapons in the pipeline. But it's also clear the U.S. wants Netanyahu to end the war with Hamas now, which Netanyahu said he will not do.
We've destroyed about 20 battalions of the Hamas's 24 terrorist battalions. We have another 4 to go. They're in Rafah.
The Israeli Prime Minister has been sharply criticized for doing everything possible for years to block the creation of a Palestinian state and for not having a plan for Gaza. Instead, he offered these thoughts.
We'll probably have to have some kind of civilian government, civilian administration by Gazans who are not committed to our destruction, but we're going to have Israel continually root out terrorists because I don't see anyone coming in to do that right now.
Spain, Ireland, and other European countries are reportedly planning to recognize a Palestinian state on May 21st, regardless of Netanyahu's opposition, although without the backing of the U.S. and Israel, the act would largely be symbolic. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey are among those paying tribute to Rex Murphy. The National Post is reporting the commentator and political pundit has died at the age of 77. Murphy, a Newfoundlander, was known for his acerbic wit and strong opinions, as heard in this 2019 comment about environmentalists opposed to resource development in his home province.
Some wandering stranger who's just unlocked himself from some bulldozer blade wanders into a place he's never seen before and is allowed to chatter on about how you're going to destroy the planet. Who in the hell is he?
The CBC's Tricia Kindleman has more.
During his storied career, which spanned from the 1970s up until just days ago, Rex Murphy focused primarily on Canadian political and social matters. Speaking freely on those issues can leave behind a complicated legacy, something actor and comedian Mark Critch acknowledged.
He was very far right in the last few years, but he also thought that Pierre Trudeau was the greatest Canadian ever. So you might not agree with what Rex had to say, but oh boy, could he ever say it.
Critch, a fellow Newfoundlander, grew up around Murphy, who was a colleague of his father's. Murphy began his broadcasting career in radio, eventually hosting CBC's cross-country checkup show, which continues to be a staple of its weekend programming, though he signed off in 2015.
Thanks to all of you I've met, said hello to. You've, in the main, been extremely kind, and in that sense, you've been overly generous. Thanks.
His final opinion column ran on the front page of the National Post on Tuesday. He's also being remembered on social media by politicians, including Stephen Harper and former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne, who also acknowledged his ability to share his thoughts so succinctly, even if they didn't always agree. She said on social media, quote, "This is sad. Rex Murphy didn't like my politics and I didn't like his, but he was a character and he will be missed a lot." Trisha Kindleman, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally, music and fashion combined, the accessories hip-hop artists wear are iconic.
My peers walk through concert doors and roam all over Coliseum floors.
After Run DMC released this song in 1986, Jam Master Jay got a 14-karat gold pendant shaped like an Adidas sneaker. Slick Rick had a gem-encrusted crown and a matching eye patch. And how about Nicki Minaj's huge pink Barbie pendant covered in diamonds? All those jewels and more go on display today at the American Museum of Natural History. The exhibit is called Ice Cold. It shows the evolution of hip-hop jewelry over the past 5 decades. And yes, the exhibit does come with its own custom playlist. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. Well, we had some early morning rain, and then we had some sun, and now we're under cloud cover in downtown. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. You're with 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Well, a harrowing night for people in an apartment block in St. James last night. Heather Wall's in a moment with the very latest that we know about what happened there and what might happen today with those folks. So stay tuned for those details. In addition, this half hour on the program, we will have a full conversation with CBC reporter Brittany Greenslade, who's been covering the trial of Jeremy Scabie this week, who's charged with killing 4 Indigenous women. We'll hear more about the videotape confession that was shown in court. Stay with us. First, though, as we mentioned, let's go to Heather and find out more about what happened in St. James. Hi, Heather.
Yeah, good morning. The deadline for everyone to be out of their homes at Birchwood Terrace has just passed. All the people who live in that 5-story apartment building in St. James, 180 suites, forced out by the city last night. They got the order. They were told last night they had to get out because of structural safety concerns. Tenants who spoke to CBC say they were shocked, stressed. Some say they are scared, wondering how they'll get all their belongings out, where they'll go. Will they have to live in their car? And many are worried for the many seniors who live in that building. So we'll hear the latest coming up at 8:30. As well, Lake Winnipeg is in drought again. The province says the lake is at its lowest level for this time of year since 1989. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
If you want to read more, by the way, about what went on in St. James, you can check it out with photos at cbc.ca/Manitoba as well. Abby Adeyemi, the forecast for Friday, what are we looking at?
11 degrees in the city. Today's outlook, we're seeing some sunny breaks, which will be followed by clearing skies. I know the sun tried to peep out early and then some cloud cover, but that will be clearing up later in the day. Now, the wind from the northwest is something we should take into consideration, as it expects to be a tad chillier than yesterday, and by afternoon, temperatures will climb to a pleasant 20 degrees. As we move into the evening period of the day, skies will clear further, leaving us with mostly clear night and a gentle northwest wind. So if you have plans for the evening, it's shaping up to be a good one. And if we just, spy into tomorrow, we're anticipating a mix of sun and clouds with a chance of showers in the morning and again later in the afternoon. And we're expecting some thunderstorms to pop up somewhere in between that. But focusing on today, we are currently at 11 and we're heading to a high of 20.
And it's giveaway weekend, so if you want to get your stuff out, I often would do the Friday night thing because people troll around looking.
True.
So it's good to get it out early. And then if it gets, maybe it'll all be taken up tonight on the curb. Make sure you mark free. Do you remember the year, Corey Funk, where people were like, someone's lawnmower, I think, got taken? Right?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
So put free on your stuff.
Yeah,
Make sure that your lawn things don't get taken.
Just because cars are on the street doesn't mean you can just take it.
Unless you have an old beater that you want someone to take
Make sure to
away,
label
right?
it clearly.
Yeah. What's up in traffic?
Very quiet so far out there. Haven't actually heard anything on the commuter line. Seems like things are going pretty smoothly. But if there's something you want to tell me about, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, a warning to our listeners that this next story contains some distressing details. It has been a difficult week for the families of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a fourth unidentified woman who's been given the name Mashkode Bishike Ikweiban, or Buffalo Woman. Jeremy Scabie is charged with first-degree murder in connection with their deaths. At his trial this week, a videotaped interview that he did with Winnipeg police back in 2022 was shown in court. In it, he outlines horrific details on how he killed the four women. His defense lawyers want him found not criminally responsible due to mental illness. CBC's Brittany Greenslade has been covering the trial and joins us now in studio with a full report. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell us more about this confession video and what parts of the video were shown to you in court.
Yeah, Marcy, we know that he was interrogated by Winnipeg police for more than 20 plus hours. Now, we didn't see all of that. We were shown about 7 hours of the tape, and the police video starts in those early morning hours of May 17th. 2022. Of course, this was just days after Rebecca Contois was killed and her remains were found by a man that was ravaging through garbage bins in North Kildonan. Now, we see Scabie enter the room. He's followed by two police officers and he gets settled in. The officers take his jacket. One removes his watch. Now, this watch, we later learn, was a keepsake taken from the body of Rebecca Contois, and he was wearing it at the time of his arrest. Scabie's given a sandwich, something to drink, and then police start into the hours-long interview. He later goes on to describe in detail all of the killings of these women. It's graphic, it's disturbing. We are limiting in this time what we share with the specifics because of that. But I can say Scabie says he sexually assaulted all four women, he killed them, he committed vile acts to their bodies, and then disposed of them.
Can you describe what his demeanor is like when he's talking to police in this video?
Yeah, Marcy, he's at ease. He's relaxed. He's sitting back. His hands are clasped in his lap, and he's just talking very candidly. He's calm. He doesn't appear to be agitated or uneasy at all throughout the time that we saw. Officers will leave the room for a period of time. They come in and out, and at one point he's seen curling up on the floor, and he takes a nap. He's also asked during the interrogation at least twice if he wants a lawyer, and he says no each time. Instead, he asks for an Orthodox priest so he can confess his sins.
Tell us about the moment that Scabie confessed to police.
Yeah, you can see it in the video, that moment, and it really stunned everyone in the courtroom that weren't expecting to see it go down like that. You have to remember, up until this point, he's only suspected in the death of one woman, Rebecca Contois, and the officers are asking him if he knew her. That's how this interrogation starts. And for the first few hours, actually, he says he recognized her, he sees her at Siloam Mission, but he doesn't really expand on that notion at all. One of the officers shows him a picture, and he states her name, says that's Rebecca Contois. Second picture, this one is graphic, of her remains, and he pauses at that time, and he says to the officer, it's disturbing, it's hard to look at. Hours later, complete shock, a confession to not just killing her, but 3 other women. Now, here's that moment.
At this point, I want to express that you've done a very good job. You guys are obviously not stupid. I really just wanted to see how far, I could take things, because the criminal justice system is a joke. The world that we're living in is sick. I was driven to do stuff like this because I was so spent emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
I killed 4 people.
Okay. Thank you for your honesty. Do you know their names?
Yeah. Morgan Harris. One, I don't even know her name, but if you just keep showing me pictures, I could probably recognize her face. I don't think she's even shown up as a missing person.
Okay.
And Rebecca.
What a moment. Did he go into any detail about why he killed these women?
So he told police he was coming down off mushrooms at the time of one of the killings and that he was on methamphetamine for the other 3. Now, throughout the more than 20-hour interview, again, we only saw a portion of that. He makes racist, anti-Semitic comments. At times he says that he thought that these women had already wasted their lives. He believes that the Holocaust was made up. Now, here's another portion.
I did this because I believe that there should be capital punishment. Okay. And that this is racially motivated. The first one, it was just kind of like, just hatred and disgust. For them, that was their time. Yes, it was my decision. It's not something that God willed or decided. It's something that I decided because I believe that doing this, I mean, it's, like obviously it causes death, but I think that extreme desperate measures need to be taken for the survival of my people.
It's going to be very difficult to hear for some people. He also spoke about racial purity. And in his interrogation, he told police at times he felt like a lion with a prey in its mouth and that he believed he was going to get away with these killings. He was overconfident, he says, but he got sloppy.
Okay, so this brings a thought to mind that I was very overconfident by the last time because I was like, sure, I would get away with it. Because the other times, like, they were like in the bin for like 4 or 5 days, and every day it was just like, man, like, I hope no one finds it. I hope no one finds it.
Did he show any remorse?
He was matter of fact when talking about the victims. He didn't show any emotion or empathy. And at one point, he recounts Morgan Harris's last moments alive, saying she went outside for a cigarette. He wasn't going to let her go, but allowed her to go out for that smoke because he said, quote, "It's going to be her last smoke, so I let her enjoy that." Now, he didn't appear to show remorse, but at one point he did say, "The only thing that I regret is the first one that I killed." And a reminder, we only saw a portion of that 20-hour interrogation.
What was the reaction from the families watching this video?
Marcy, you couldn't imagine. It's difficult for us to hear and listen to it. It's probably difficult for our listeners hearing this right now, but for that family, it was incredibly emotional. Family members from each of the 3 known victims were in attendance. These families have also kind of wrapped their arms around Buffalo Woman, taking her in as one of their own as well. Morgan Harris's 2 daughters and her cousin have been sitting front row every day and listening to this interrogation video. Mercedes Myron's sister and grandmother. Her sister had to leave the room at one time, along with Morgan's youngest daughter had left the room as well, specifically as each of the moments about their killings came up with those details. Other family members stayed throughout and listened to it. Very emotional. Myron's grandmother sat there crying. She was holding her head in her hands, at times just closing her eyes. You could see the tears and she was just listening. At times she also just shook her head and was looking up towards the ceiling.
The trial continues today. Who's expected to testify, and then what can we expect to hear next?
Yeah, today's witness testimony is expected to focus on the Brady landfill, which police searched early on for those other remainders of Rebecca Contois. The Crown also plans to present more evidence, which includes letters that Scabie wrote to another inmate. They say that they're hoping this illustrates his mental capacity, so we're unclear what is in those letters at this time. His estranged wife is also expected to testify next week. We're going to see some video surveillance. The defense has yet to make their argument. We know that they plan to argue he's not criminally responsible due to a mental disorder. So in the coming weeks, we'll eventually hear their side of the case.
All right, Brittany, take care of yourself as well through this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is CBC's Brittany Greenslade reporting on the Scabie trial and live in our studio this morning. Remember, ongoing coverage at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Liftoff. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
8:23 a.m. Friday morning, 11 degrees, partly cloudy, and I think we could all use maybe just a moment, a bit of a musical break. This is Tyler Del Pino, Winnipeg pop artist. The tune's called Middle of Nowhere.
Leave the shore, sail away, say goodbye to yesterday, searching for adventure on your own. Wanderlust, different place, new beginnings, time and space, trying to get wherever you can go. And it's like an endless sea, you wander endlessly. Stay the course, hopes alive, ups and downs all through the ride, loving who you're loving while you roam. Everything I do leads me back to the middle of nowhere. And I really thought I knew, but I still can't find my home. Left the compass far behind, trust your instincts deep inside, map out which direction you should go. Frustration settle in, tear it down, build up again, hoping that this time you'll watch you grow. No stars above that shine to lead you through the night. Put yourself to the test, search to find true happiness, wonder when you get there if you'll know. Everything I do leads me back to the middle of nowhere. And I really thought I knew, but I still can't find my home. You can sacrifice your life, you can sell your soul, you can lock yourself away for years. There's no telling what's to come, where the wind might blow, so it's good to make a friend with fear until you find your home. Everything I do leads me back to the middle of nowhere. And I really thought I knew, but I still can't find my home. You can sacrifice your life, you can sell your soul, you can lock yourself away for years. There's no telling what's to come, where the wind might blow, so it's good to make a friend with fear until you find your home. Leave the shore, sail away, say goodbye to yesterday, searching for adventure on your own.
Tyler Del Pino, a little music for us this morning. It's Middle of Nowhere, the tune. Well, it is 8:27 a.m., and I'll tell you what, we've been talking about giveaway weekend. We've been talking about the weather this weekend. We've not yet mentioned Mom. So Lori Hoogstraten is here, hosting Radio Noon right now, and she's here to talk about the call-in conversation. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, after the 12:30 news, our call-in is going to feature a photographer, a family photographer, whose kind of mantra is, Mom, you should be in front of the camera, not behind it all the time. So she specializes in just capturing those beautiful moments, and we thought it'd be a great jumping off point for everybody to call in and just talk about everything Mom.
I love that. Yeah, photos of Mom. It's interesting because one of my favorite photos of my mom is, it does include my sister and I when I was kids, but I think it's because it's that iconic 70s thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but in the 70s, it seems like, I don't know, did we have everything that we were wearing was knit by my baba?
Yeah.
Like knit by my grandma?
That's right.
So there's like knitted sort of like skull cap things on with like pom-poms that hung off like ponytails.
Right.
So there's this iconic photo. My mom probably hates it, but she's got this like really shaggy short 70s haircut and big brown bell bottoms and a matching tunic top,
Cool.
like very styling for the 70s. And she's leaning down in the front yard. And I used to live on Bronx Avenue out in East Kildonan. And so that's where this was taken. So she's leaning down in the front yard and she's kind of gathering us together. You can tell we're trying to get out of her arms. She's kind of huddling on the lawn, keeping us there. I think it was my sister's first day of kindergarten. So I'm wearing this funny little knit skull cap thing that's pink and white. And my sister's there with this, it must have been my sister's first day because I think she's got a school bag with her that was kind of handmade. But I don't know why that one stands out, but there's just moments. And somewhere in my mind, I like to sort of romanticize that I remember my mom, even though I must have been only 4 years old in the photo. Yeah.
Well, and that's what we're hoping people will do. Either call in with their most favorite photos with mom, because as you say, sometimes it's not the studio photograph or the me and mom. It's like a family moment of some kind.
Yeah.
Because, Mother's Day Sunday, and call in 780-0893 after 12:30 news.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Calls about mom. 1-800-268-5483 is the call-in number if you're out of town. So as Lori said, 780-0893 is the in-town number. Those are for live calls for the call-in between 12:30 and 1. Remember, though, Lori pops in here because if you're listening to the morning show and you need to leave a message, if you can't make it over lunch hour, you're going to be busy today, then you can leave a message. So call and tell us about your mom. And if it has a photograph, if you have something to share about a photograph of mom, that would be lovely as well, since the guest is someone who's photographed a lot of families. 788-3797. I think I got that right. I'm looking at our studio director. I did. 204-788-3797. That's the Radio Noon listener line. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you, Lori Hoog-Stratton. Heading out of the studio now. And thank you for listening to the show this morning. We're almost wrapped with the morning show, but not before we hear from Heather Wells one more time with our CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 11 degrees in downtown Winnipeg. It's not going to be quite as warm as yesterday. Today's high is 20, and that wind is going to pick up. It's going to be gusting to 60 later today from the northwest. A frantic scene is playing out this hour at Birchwood Terrace. Everyone who lives in that 5-story, 180-suite St. James apartment block on Portage Avenue has been ordered out. They had until 8 this morning to do so. A CBC crew on the scene says a senior had to be carried out down the stairs. Moments ago, a locksmith arrived. Police and fire also are on the scene. The order to vacate Birchwood Terrace came from the City of Winnipeg last night. It says an inspection found severe deterioration in the structure in various locations. Julia Walton has lived in that building for the past year and a half. She found a place to stay last night, but worries for the seniors who live there.
But it's hard on older people. All of a sudden, just to come to your door and say you've got to be out of your building, you've got to be out and can't take anything, just up and go.
Danny Lieber came home to news that everyone was being kicked out. He says he is stressed and scared. He teared up, saying his girlfriend was upstairs crying.
I have a 2.5-year-old kid. I have a girlfriend, and who wants to take in this is ridiculous. 2 cats, who wants to take in a little toddler and a girlfriend, right? It's a whole circus.
Lieber doesn't know what they'll do and wonders if they'll be forced to live in their car. The city says the apartment building will be empty and a reception center will be set up to help residents find temporary accommodations. Lake Winnipeg is heading into another drought. And as CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the lake level is low enough to cause more potential trouble for Manitoba Hydro.
Water laps at the shore of Lake Winnipeg. There's just a little more shore than usual and a little less lake. Randy McMahon runs errands on the lake, a bed and breakfast in Panema.
Very, very unusual, yes. Yeah, you would never see all this rock in the springtime.
Lake Winnipeg is within a whisker, 12 millimeters to be precise, of its lowest recorded level for this week in May since 1989. Several major rivers that feed the lake are flowing below normal. Manitoba Hydro calls this a drought, and the Crown Corporation says if these conditions continue, it may not be able to generate enough surplus electricity to sell to other jurisdictions. That could mean another year of losses on top of the $190 million Hydro expected to lose for the fiscal year that ended in March. Finance Minister Adrian Salas says Manitobans shouldn't worry.
Manitoba receives most of our precipitation that drives hydro between May and August.
Lake Winnipeg is expected to rise a little until August. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Penima, Manitoba.
A forensic identification officer and a pathologist are expected to testify today at the first-degree murder trial of Jeremy Scabie. Yesterday, a video of the police interrogation of Scabie was released. He gives the officers a watch, which belonged to Rebecca Contois, one of his 4 victims. Some of her remains were found inside a North Kildonan dumpster just days before. That led to Scabie's arrest. In the video, he confesses to killing 4 people.
I was very overconfident by the last stop because I was like, sure, I would get away with it. Because the other times, like, they were like in the bin for like 4 or 5 days.
Scabie's victims are Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th still unidentified woman given the name Mushkode Bishike Ikwe Ibon. His lawyers argue he shouldn't be held criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. The Crown says the killings were intentional and racially motivated. More than 90,000 jobs were added to Canada's economy last month. It is a hiring boost few analysts had predicted. But with many of the jobs being seasonal, the country's unemployment rate holds steady at 6.1%. This is the final look at the state of the labour market ahead of the Bank of Canada's interest rate decision next month. Well, Clear Lake will be free of most boats this summer. The popular recreation area in Riding Mountain National Park is now closed to personal watercraft to try to stop the spread of zebra mussels. The invasive species was found there late last year. Parks Canada is forging ahead with the temporary ban, despite many people who live there opposing. Cottage owner Scott McMullen started a petition urging boat access be maintained. He doesn't expect to visit Clear Lake nearly as often this summer.
We'll be checking out other lakes around the province for sure to get our either fishing or boating in. I know I've seen a few boats over the winter already come up for sales, anticipating this.
McMullen predicts Clear Lake's economy is going to take a hit because he also expects it will attract fewer visitors this year. You can find more news updated throughout the day, including the latest on that situation with that 5-story apartment building being cleared out of residents on Portage Avenue. We'll have that as it develops through the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Big thanks to our news department this morning, Heather Wells and Aaron Broman out there. Also thanks to Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Kalkadan Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Ikuma, Jim Agapito, Dylan Longhurst, Daniel Friesen, May McKillop, and Bruce Layden, who work on all of our shows here at CBC on the radio, our associate producers. Our hosts in unit, Nadia Kidwai, Faith Findell, and Janet Stewart. Producer in unit, Wendy Parker, as well as Emily Brass, who was filling in hosting this week for me. YouTube producer is Brad Lillies. Nellie Gonzalez is a producer of the Current Affairs Unit shows. And Leif Larson is a senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Corey.
Traffic's good. Hope everyone gets the free stuff that their heart desires.
Have a good giveaway weekend. That's right. And Abby.
Across the province, a mix of conditions ranging from clearing skies to mainly sunny skies.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Always. Have a great weekend yourselves. And I'm Marcy Marcuso. We'll talk to you again on Monday morning. Or maybe tonight if you're going to the Kid Think Gala, and just so much important work, Kid Think, in our community for kids 12 and under who need help with their mental health. So that's going to be a big gala at Hotel Fort Garry. Maybe you're there and you can read more about Kid Think online if you want to see what more they do. But we'll see you out there later. Take care and be well, Manitoba. The Current is coming up next right here on CBC. Have a great weekend.